Hey everyone, it's Ed. I wanted to add this little addendum on. The show has already been recorded and I'm kind of throwing this in while editing. There are three things I just wanted to mention before we start the show. So the first thing is I apologize for Trevin's voice quality. We tried our best to get him sounding as good as possible, but his internet connection just wasn't great, so there's periods of time where his voice is very kind of choppy and staticky sounding. He does hang out in our Discord. If there's any part during the show where he answers a question or says something that you couldn't understand and you want to get a clarification, please feel free to reach out to me or post in the Discord, and I'm sure either he or I will be happy to answer for you. Secondly, there's a part in the show where we talk about the sexy sax man, and I talk about how it's very difficult to get the saxophone music because it's not available in the sound test in the game. Well, literally the day after I recorded the show, I discovered that you can get that saxophone music from the sound test. So that's what I'll be using in the show rather than the music that I was describing during the talking. So there's that. Third of all, and I apologize for this, the show went really long, it was really late, and we were getting tired. I did forget to thank all of my Patreon patrons at the end of the show, so I love you guys, and it was a total screw-up, and I do totally apologize for that. So thank you to all of my Patreon followers, even while the Patreon is suspended right now. You guys are still hanging and waiting, and I will eventually start back up with some Patreon stuff. So, anyways, let's get on with the show. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you guys so much for keeping subscribed to the VGMbassy during my hiatus. It really means a lot to me. You set foot on foreign soil. Only this land isn't ruled by any country or government. In this land we celebrate music. In this land we celebrate games. In this land we celebrate those who compose video game music. Welcome to the VGMbassy. Welcome to the VGMbassy,
a podcast where we have fun
talking about video games
and video game music.
Yes, indeed. PixelTunes fans, that was for you, because we have a special show today. The theme of today's show, I think, is overdue things, because we're talking about a very overdue game, and I've got two very overdue VG ambassadors with me, and it's also an overdue return because I haven't put a show out since last October, and now it's getting into February. So, holy cow, it's great to be back. This is VGMbassy episode 66, I believe, and I've got two great guests with me, Mike Levy and composer Jredd, Trevin Hughes, and we are talking about the mysterious, way overdue, much hyped, much controversial beat 'em up PAPRIUM. And this is going to be awesome because Trevin composed most of the music for the game alongside David Burton, aka Groove Master 303. And Mike and I both own copies, and we've been hyped about it since we pre-ordered it. I don't know, when did you pre-order it, Mike? Like, I think I did mine 3 years ago.
So I think same day as you, because honestly, this podcast and this episode and everything we were talking about doing during the PixelTunes Radio days.
That's right.
And we were both super hyped for this game. We saw that trailer on the website, and we were just like, oh my God, this game looks amazing. And you and I both pre-ordered it, which is a rare thing for both of us to do at the same time.
If we're both excited about it, it's got to be good, yeah.
Yeah. We pre-ordered it, and we were both talking about it, like, getting hyped for it. And even after PixelTunes ended, you and I were both like still talking. We were like, oh, we should bring the show back. Like if, when PAPRIUM gets released, and then it never got released. Well, until now.
Right.
This is long overdue.
I think both of you guys asked me whether I'd do a show at around the same time. I don't know who said what first, but you guys were like, if it ever happens, can we do a show? And I'm like, if it happens, I'm down. And so here we are.
Yeah, and what happened was when we both pre-ordered it around 2017 or something like that.
Yeah, it was middle of 2017.
Yeah, and it was just before Thanksgiving that I got the email that said it was finally coming out, and verify your address so we could ship it to you, yada, yada, yada. And I was super psyched. And the first thing I did, not even as a, let's get you on the show, but I just reached out to Trevin. I was like, hey, congratulations, man. It's finally coming out. Like, how does it feel? I can't wait to hear the full soundtrack. And so we chatted back and forth via email a little bit. And then you were the one that said, can I be on the show? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, of course. This would be great. So it seems
for sure.
You've been really excited to talk about this, huh?
You guys have been waiting since 2017. David and I composed this back in 2013.
Oh my God. 7 years.
I've been waiting even longer, so it's like I'm a soda bottle that's been shook up for 7 years, and now you're uncorking me. So I'm going to try to rein it in, but...
Gross.
Yeah, I know.
No, it's good because I've got lots of questions about the composition. I've got lots of questions and comments about the songs. I've been playing this game religiously. I have beaten it multiple different ways. There's a whole bunch of different routes you can take. There's so much content that we're going to go through as we go throughout the show.
You actually started a religion, right?
I did. Papriology.
Yeah. Right.
Yes. I kneel down in front of my Genesis every morning.
But I'll try to be the high priest that everybody needs.
Bless me, Sir Jredd. Thank you. So to start this off, just a little bit of info about the game. It is a beat-em-up with quasi-RPG elements in the sense that you earn things along the way, and those things will unlock other things in the game. There are multiple routes you can take. There are multiple endings. It's just chock full of stuff. And in the game, there are 63 pieces of music. So far, though, only 52 pieces have been unlocked by anybody that I can tell. There's been a whole bunch of people playing their games on the internet. A lot of people have gotten farther than I have. I've gotten pretty darn far, but even them have only unlocked 52 songs, which is where I'm at too. So I'm pretty confident that of the available music, I've heard all of it. And there's promised DLC for this game too, which is crazy. There's like a little hole on top of the cartridge that is supposed to be used with what they call the MegaWire 4.0. I don't know how I'm only hearing of it after the 4th iteration, but supposedly hooking this wire up to the cartridge will unlock DLC. I don't know how, if you have to or special order that from Watermelon Games or what, but I'm assuming that those last 11 songs will be DLC oriented. I could be proven wrong, but it doesn't seem like anybody else knows how to unlock the rest of those. We're going to feature 15 pieces of music from the game today, chosen by the three of us. And we're going to have a lot of fun. I think we've got some really great tunes, especially tunes that show off the breadth of this soundtrack, everywhere from rock to techno to dubstep to cinematic, kind of Castlevania-ish stuff. Yeah, Jredd, what was it like? Like, how did you first hear about the game? And what did they explain to you when you were first brought on board?
So basically, I first heard about the game when Groovemaster was at the tail end of working on Pure Solar. He didn't do any of the music, but he did a little bit of the sound effects. And that's kind of how he got in. Basically, I was like, oh, David, if you ever get another chance to do a game like this, please see if you can get me on. We'll work together and we'll knock the soundtrack out like super quick. It's going to be awesome. Yeah, long story short, he did. And he was working on it first for about a week or so before I got brought in. And basically our mutual friend Tito was the main person who made the tracker that we worked on. And we were basically, I'd say we were like the bug testers of the tracker in a way. Because I can remember like the very first iterations of it, it would say like, you know, before you exit, like make sure you save often or it might crash. It got better as we were going along.
Yeah.
That might be why like some songs are, you know, at the very beginning, like they're kind of shorter because we're like, we don't know if this is gonna crash. And then as you get further on into the game, like the things get more complicated, you know.
I did notice that, yeah.
Better with the soundtrack. So that's part of the reason why I think, if I can remember correctly, it's been a while, but that's the general consensus, I think.
Yeah, that's cool. So usually at the beginning of a show like this where we're focusing on one game, I go into a lot about the history and lots of factoids about the game. It had a very controversial development. Lots of people have very strong opinions about this game and the people who made it, but there is tons of content about this game on the web. Mike, I know you're making your own Dude You Haven't Played This Game about it as well, right?
That's the plan.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
So I'm going to kind of leave it to you as the listener if you're interested in finding more about that stuff. Literally just type the word PAPRIUM into YouTube and you will find tons of videos. Yeah, exactly. So we're going to explain a whole bunch about mainly the gameplay, maybe some of the stuff that people haven't gotten too far into while we go throughout the show, but I'm not gonna, we've got a lot to talk about today. I know, Jredd, you're full of information and you want to get it all out. So instead of it being a 4-hour show with us going into all the nitty-gritty details, we're gonna kind of focus on the music and how the music is presented in the game. So I think with that, we should probably get into our first piece of music. We're gonna listen to Theme of PAPRIUM, or Theme of PAP, as it's called in the sound test, and we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about the sound chip, the extra sound channels that this game has beyond what the YM2612 provides from the Genesis. There's a whole lot more audio than that going on in these tunes. And so I want to give you guys a little bit of a demonstration of what the music will sound like. So we'll give a listen to Theme of PAPRIUM, and we will be right back.
Sounds good.
All right, welcome back. That was Theme of PAPRIUM from PAPRIUM, composed by Trevin Hughes, a.k.a. Jredd, and David Burton, a.k.a. Groovemaster. 303. So as you can tell, that doesn't sound like a typical Genesis tune at all. There's a lot more going on there than usual. Mike, what were your impressions of this tune the first time you heard it?
Well, it's funny because you were thinking the exact same thing that I was thinking when we were talking about this before we came back from the listening to the track, in the sense that I was waiting for PAPRIUM to play the little PCM voice sample that normally plays when you boot the game up. And so I'm just so ingrained with that version of it that hearing it without it kind of woke me up. Like, wait, where's the PCM sample, man? Like, I need it in my gullet. I love the arpeggio. I
could have yelled at you if you wanted me to.
I'm
right here.
Yeah, there you go. I love that arpeggio effect in the beginning with the
yeah.
It has a uniqueness to it though. Like, yeah, we've all heard arpeggios on the NES, Super NES, Genesis, etc., etc. But arpeggios in PAPRIUM, and I don't know if you can, say that it's that sound chip that did it, but it was really kind of warbly and almost felt like it was played not on a real guitar, but like a synth guitar, if that makes sense, or like a keytar. Because it had the feeling of pressing notes, but it felt like keys instead of notes. So it's almost like a keytar, which perfectly matches up with the whole 80s,
cyberpunk aesthetic, right?
Cyberpunk aesthetic, exactly. Yeah. I was digging it, and then it kind of kicks into this really kind of, I don't want to say lo-fi, but like almost lo-fi, like really kind of relaxed beat, and the whole track just flows into a different feel and vibe from the beginning. And a lot of tracks on this soundtrack do that actually quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. While you're listening to this too, it's like an arcade style attract mode, because you get the title screen, and then it goes into some gameplay, and then it introduces the characters with these giant full screen portraits, and you've got this music playing the whole time in the background. So it's really cool just sitting there watching it kind of loop and listening to this song, and watching everything go for a little ride throughout the different scenes that you'll see as you play throughout the game. Trev, was this the first track that you worked on? Did you go kind of in sequential order when you composed this soundtrack?
Not quite. I think this was like near the beginning, but there's actually a few tracks that we made before this one, and I can kind of tell you guys why it has the feeling of having one section and then kind of going into another one, because David and I might think, oh, Trevin worked on this track and David worked on that track. Not necessarily. A lot of the tracks we worked on together and like kind of riffed off each other in one track. So that's kind of why you have a lot of unexpected changes, but we hope that they flow together okay. But yeah, it's got kind of an interesting sound to the soundtrack because a lot of the tracks are both of us together in one track, playing off each other.
That's really cool. I love when composers do that, like collaborate on music together, because it makes it sound more cohesive. There's a lot of game soundtracks out there with multiple composers, and you can kind of easily tell who worked on what, and it sounds almost like two different albums just kind of mooshed together. But I feel like with PAPRIUM, you've got a lot of music that really kind of holds that same tone and that same attitude throughout the entire game, and I really like that because it doesn't take you out of the game at all. You're not like, oh, this music is weird compared to everything else. It all just feels like it belongs in this like dystopian cyberpunk kind of very
music
rundown
is weird,
world.
But at least it's all weird together, right?
Exactly. It's the same kind of weird.
Yeah. Mike brought up an interesting point about how he noticed the arpeggios were a bit different than what you normally hear. And in the tracker itself, there was an effect that we could use to not only put different note arpeggios, but like kind of control the speed of them. So like you could put one effect down to control the arpeggio itself, what notes it'll hit, and then another effect to control the speed of it. And so sometimes we'd kind of change it around to make it sound almost like random or more organic. And so the fact that you picked up on that was pretty interesting. So that was something that Tito added in the tracker, and we were like, how are we gonna use this? But like there was all kinds of different interesting things in this tracker that you probably don't find in other ones. And as we get more into the soundtrack, I'll try to bring up more little tidbits like that.
Cool. Yeah, and one thing about your music, Trev, is that I know you love soloing, and I love your solos. And
I do.
The fact that you make your solos sound so performed, even though it's sequenced, has always been one of my favorite things about your music. And it sounds like the tracker that you guys were using was really kind of helping you along with that and enabling you to bring more feeling and more of like an organic performance to your music.
It did, and thank you. I appreciate that.
That's awesome. So what was the tracker like? Like, was it like similar to working with like FamiTracker or something?
Kind of. So there was a section where you would load in samples, and then there was the main pattern mode, which was kind of like FamiTracker or Def Mask, but a lot more channels. Yeah, that was kind of overwhelming at first because when you're working with chiptunes, you're usually used to having some sort of limitation and working around those. But when you have an extra 16 channels or so of audio, it's kind of like, how do we use all these? Like, what do I, because I'm used to like squeezing things into smaller constraints. But we figured it out as we went along.
Did the chip allow you more ability to do things that you wouldn't normally do with the hardware of a Genesis, audio-wise specifically?
I'd say it's about comparable on the Genesis side of things. Although, like I said, there were interesting things like that arpeggio thing I mentioned. As we get more into the soundtrack, you'll hear a lot of like glitch beats in the samples and stuff like that. And there was kind of an interesting thing where we could kind of use one slide that's more like a pitch slide and another slide that would not only slide the notes up or down, but it would re-trigger the notes so that it kind of had a glitching sound to it. And we used that a lot on a lot of the beats, like
that's cool.
As we go further. So that's kind of how we did that. It was an interesting. I remember Tito said, "You're doing things that I never would have thought of doing on the tracker with the effects that you're messing with." So that's pretty high praise from the programmer of the tracker himself.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I'll take it.
Did you guys use any of the like the legacy Master System hardware, any of the wavetable stuff that was in there?
Yeah, the little arpeggio on the beginning of the track is actually the Master System PSG.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah, we did use that for sure.
It's hard to tell sometimes what's like a sample that's just emulating a wavetable sound or what's an actual wavetable sound.
Yeah, we kind of did some of that on purpose because like there's later songs where we have like a sampled brass instrument playing or sampled guitar, and we layer it with like an FM guitar, and so it's kind of like this cool detuned like fat sound.
That's cool.
So I gotta ask, who was the voice of that PAPRIUM PCM sample?
I really don't know. I think it's somebody that I don't know. Maybe Fonzie hired to do the. It wasn't one of us, I would tell you. But.
Okay, so they basically got the recording of it and sent it to you, and did they give you advice like, hey, here's a sample, we want this in the PAPRIUM theme in the beginning, or how did that work?
Well, basically, they just took the music from us, and as far as like what samples were going to be where, as far as like sound effects and stuff, we really didn't know that much. So
they had somebody else basically working on the sound effects aspect of that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were 3 or 4 names credited for the voice samples. If you see the credits of the game, and none of them were familiar to me, so they must have been just other folks that Fonzie brought in to do crazy wacky voices. So speaking of crazy wacky voices, I think that's a good segue into our next track. I've kind of separated the show into a couple of different chapters, so to speak, because this game is so big, and I wanted to kind of at least group the songs into some sort of coherent thing, so we know what we're talking about when we're playing them. So these first 2 songs that we're playing, Theme of PAPRIUM, and this next one coming up called Bad Dudes versus PAPRIUM, are part of the title, music, and menus section of our show. So we're going to listen to Bad Dudes versus PAPRIUM. This is one of Dredd's picks. Just to set this this song up, Jredd, what are we going to be hearing here?
So this one has a lot of Groove Master in it. I helped a little bit, but this is like, I would say like a 70 or 80% Groove Master track. Yeah, it's wild, but I love it, and so I wanted to feature something with more him in it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So this plays while you're in your options screen, setting up all your difficulty and sound options, etc., etc. And it's a fun little hip-hop romp. So let's take a listen, and we will be right back.
All right.
Welcome back to VGMbassy. That was Bad Dudes versus PAPRIUM off the 2020 released PAPRIUM. Yes, it came out. You're listening to the music of it. And we have special guest Trevin, aka Jredd, with us to answer all of our questions. And we have many questions, as you have heard in that last break. But Ed, you actually wanted to mention something about the theme of PAPRIUM that we missed on the first break, right?
I did, and I actually even reminded everyone to talk about it, and we all forgot because we're all having too much fun chatting. But Trev, just recently you wrote a NES remix of the theme of PAPRIUM, which we are going to play at the end of the show, which is it's really good. It sounds like a Ninja Turtles 3, like a Konamified version of the song. It's sped up. It's really, really good. So stay tuned to the end of the show for I call it the 2A03 remix because that's what it sounds like to me. I think, and that's
it is.
PAPRIUM uses hexadecimal in place of regular binary numbers in the game. So like your score will go up and you'll see A's and B's and F's and stuff in your score. So calling it 2A03 is no, it's not confusing at all. It's a base 16 numbering system, which is really strange. Even when you see the bios for all the characters, their ages is like 6A. You're like, I don't know what that is.
Listen, don't mess around with any girls who tell you that they're 6A. It's a trap. Yeah. Yes. I don't care if they look like Alex from PAPRIUM. I don't care. Don't mess with them.
There's something in that blue drug that everybody's been drinking that makes them grow faster than they should.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about Bad Dudes versus PAPRIUM. Lots of samples in this one. I got my my question answered because there's a sample that goes on kind of halfway through that to me sounds "Let's Get Erection." But what was the actual sample?
I believe it's "Let's Get Scratching," but then again, considering how Fonzie sent thongs to everybody in the mail, who knows? Right?
It's definitely the erection one, like for sure, 100%.
Yeah.
And even if it's not, it is.
The first time I went to the options screen when I was playing this game, I probably had one anyway, so I was so excited to play it.
Yeah, right. I really love in this track the hip hop vibe, the "How Low Can You Go" PCM sample, and it just has such a thick groove to it. It's very syrupy and very like angsty. It's like angsty hip hop. I love it.
Yeah. That is, like I was saying before, like 70 or 80% David on that. I think I did like little things to tweak it, like I added a bit more like pitch bends and vibrato on the guitar notes, but the main melody was his, and like the sample where it's like a choir going, like I made it so that it kind of had an echo rather than just one playthrough, whereas that's what he had before, and I think on "How Low Can You Go," I actually added that weird warbly arpeggio effect, so it sounded a little bit more textured. this is mostly Groove Master. I just add a little tweaks here and there.
So with this track, it was different than the other track then. You're saying that the first track that we listened to, the theme of PAPRIUM, the sound effect on that was like handed off, basically, like they added it in afterwards, but you're saying that this track, it was intentionally baked into the track by you guys. Okay.
Yeah, in fact, Fonzie told us like he wanted us to make some tracks with vocal samples in them to really show off the power of the sound chip. But we were kind of wondering, how's that going to work? Because like, you know, you're beating up people and they're screaming. Isn't that going to be like overboard? But he ended up putting it in the options. I'm like, oh, okay.
That makes sense.
That's cool.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, the PCM samples sound really clean. Normally on Genesis tracks, like if you play, what's it called?
DAC samples, I believe.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think of the
digital
game that
audio.
has horrendous...
Well, Hyperstone Heist has pretty grainy samples in it. There's a couple.
Hyperstone Heist isn't as bad as Phelios. Phelios is the game that has... Where it sounds like she's like gargling mouthwash. It's like... it sounds rough, man.
Yeah.
And this game can process so many samples at the same time as well. You've got, once in a while when you're playing through a stage, you'll get like a crowd of people like running away from a boss or something, and they're screaming. You've got the samples playing and the music at the same time. You've got the grunts and groans from the enemies, plus your characters making sounds, like 3 or 4.
And then the announcer shows up and he's like, showtime!
Exactly, exactly. And there's just so many sounds going on at once. And so you're saying that there's the extra chip on the cart, there's the 2612 in the Genesis, plus you're also leveraging some of the wavetable stuff from the SMS. So you're basically running 3 sound chips at once for this music. And I can't think of any other 16-bit game that's done that, whether it's arcade hardware or 2 maximum, like an FM chip and a sampler or something like that. But this is some serious stuff going on. So, and this was all within one tracker that you had access to all 3 of these chips to make music with, right?
Yeah, it was a little overwhelming, but like I said, as we messed with it, we got better as we went along and made more tracks. So that's just kind of how it goes.
Excellent. So one of the earlier tracks, so we're gonna get into our early levels part of our show. I guess this is a good time to explain how the game is set up. So you have a map of PAPRIUM. PAPRIUM is the last city on the planet, and as the game describes, when you're starting up the game, there's a little text scroll, and it's a point equidistant between Pyongyang and Tokyo, I believe. So everybody kind of gathered in this central location as the apocalypse happened. And so there's this giant city called PAPRIUM, and the dregs of society live in the underground at the lower areas of the city, and then the rich people live at the top in the skyscrapers and even above that. So there are 4 distinct paths you can take through this city and 4 different endpoints. And as you go through these 4 different paths, there are routes, whether they are routes that you can choose or routes that you can find as secret areas that kind of go in between, kind of spiderwebbing between these 4 different paths. So the early levels are kind of areas that aren't on any particular path. It's kind of before everything starts branching out. So the first one we're going to listen to is called Intercom, which is a really good name for it. It's just kind of like the intercom area where you can kind of communicate out to all of the other paths that the game offers. The music that plays during the stage is called Asian Chill, and it's kind of a fan favorite. Like, I've seen YouTube comments. There's a couple of different sound test recordings on YouTube, and in most of those comments, people are like, OMG, Asian Chill, it's so good. So it's fitting that this is one of the first tracks we're going to be playing on the show from gameplay. Any memories, anything you want to set this track up with before we start listening to it, Trevin?
Sure. So the Bad Dudes vs. PAPRIUM track was mostly Groove Master. This one is mostly me.
Cool.
So, like, in this one, Groove Master added, like, I believe there's a string melody that he added, and I believe that he did some, PSG blips. But yeah, this one was, like, probably the first track that I felt was mostly mine, and I was starting to get confident with the software.
Awesome. Why don't you talk a little bit about why these tracks are named how they are, too?
Oh, right. Well, that has to do with the fact that when Groove Master and I work on a track, we usually, have, just like a tracker file. We just name it whatever, because we always figure, well, we'll make the MP3 and we'll figure out a name then. So we were just used to doing that. So some of these track names are pretty weird because we had so many tracks and we just wanted to kind of differentiate them. These weren't necessarily, in my mind, meant to be the final names, but that's what we have. So.
Yeah, a lot of them just basically describe the mood of the song and aren't really like true song titles, which I thought was funny that Fonzie took the songs and he's just like, yeah, that's what it's called, and throws it in the game.
So, then again, Streets of Rage has songs like Violent Breathing. I still don't know what that means. But,
yeah, that's true. Attack the Barbarian, the Poets.
Yes.
Right. Asian Chill sounds like a really good ice cream place that serves like Asian flavored, not like Asian food flavored specialty ice cream, it's like a mochi specialty shop.
Perfect.
Ginger ice cream,
green tea ice cream is delicious. Yeah.
Soy sauce ice cream.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Delicious.
Very interesting. All right, so let's listen to Asian Chill, and we will be right back. All right, that was Asian Chill from the Intercom area from PAPRIUM, composed mainly by Jredd here with some aftertouches by Groovemaster 303. And this is a great song. It's the second song that you play if you're playing the game for the first time. So there's a really kind of rockin' track which plays in the first area, and then this is like basically the second area of the game. It's kind of like an apartment complex. There's little shopping areas, and it's like a retail commercial zone, I guess. And you walk in, and you've got these nice little kind of very floaty, jazzy arps playing, and you're kicking the crap out of guys while being relaxing to this tune. So, and then it really kind of picks up. You get those great guitar samples and that gorgeous Jredd solo over it. It's a lot of fun. It's another song that's got two kind of disparate parts. So was that another kind of conscious decision, Trevin, or were those kind of made on purpose?
Yeah, because I didn't want it to be too repetitive, and I was just thinking like, what can I do to kind of make this interesting? And I think what happened is Groovemaster started to do something else. So he did sort of lead off a little bit the second part, but like then I just kind of took over and I was like, I'm gonna put guitars in here. So that's basically what happened. I was like, I want to shred.
That's cool.
I mean, I'm a sucker for guitars, but
Me too.
That part kind of woke me up a little bit. And when I say that, I don't mean that the track is kind of a sleepy track. It's a chill track for sure, but I definitely got the more like jazz oriented kind of vibes. But then when that guitar comes in, it sounds like a lost Tim Follin song with those guitars. Like, not only from the attack of the guitar, but also the sound style felt very reminiscent of something that you'd hear on like the Super NES, which I was like, yo, you shouldn't be hearing something like that on the Genesis.
Yeah, true.
It really kind of shook me and woke me up, and I was like, whoa, I've never heard the Genesis sound that good. So it's really cool. Which, I mean, you know, I love the Genesis and everything, but like, I'm a Super Nintendo guy, so like hearing those guitar sounds out of a Genesis was like, whoa, I didn't think that was possible. But the Yamaha sound chip is it the 2612, right? That is it is a beast. So it can do things that you wouldn't believe it can do, but it's all in the hands of the people that make it that much more special.
Yeah.
There is skitching.
That's
look
true.
at one game that has something that's similar.
Yeah, and Road Rash 3.
Yeah,
Yep.
totally.
Yep. Yeah, so I mean, that guitar sample was probably produced by the extra chip.
Yeah.
What do they call it? The
guitar
Detonmeister?
sample was, but the guitar lead was at the
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I gotcha. That makes sense. You said Fallen. What I first thought of when I heard those guitars was Spider-Man and Venom and Maximum Carnage.
Mm-hmm.
That Green Jelly soundtrack.
Oh, like
Chris
Jojo.
Chris Jojo, and Alistair Brimble.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, because that was like a much heavier kind of rock-oriented. It's funny because I was just playing that a couple days ago, and I was like, wow, Chris Jojo was really trying to be Fallen on this. There's a lot of really Tim Fallen style stuff on there, but it has a much harder kind of edge to it. And that's kind of what I thought here. I was like, this is Fallen-esque, but it's a little more rock, you know?
It's the LJN guitar tone.
Yeah, exactly. Which, hey, it's better than the Capcom guitar tone, if I have anything to say about it.
Wah, wah. Mad hate.
People are going to be writing it.
I know. I'll get the.
I'm furiously typing on my keyboard as we speak.
Excellent. Keep
I can
typing.
hear you. It's hurting my ears.
Get out the pitchforks and tiki torches.
Exactly.
So there's an interesting mechanic in this game that only happens if you play on the very hard difficulty or above, and that is the appearance of Sexy Sax Man, and that is what he is called in the game. And so when you're playing on certain stages on very hard or above, suddenly a man will come out of the side of the screen playing a saxophone. And if you let him stand there long enough and it gets to the right part in the song, suddenly a extra channel of audio, a saxophone solo, will start playing over the music. And the mechanic is cool because you have to keep this guy alive if you want to keep hearing the saxophone. He is attackable. He has a health bar, and you can hit him. We didn't really talk about this, but if you have a Sega CD attached to your Genesis while you're playing, you can have an AI helper as a second player, so they can accidentally hit Sexy Sax Man, or the enemy attacks can hit Sexy Sax Man. So he's in a lot of danger. And every time you hit Sexy Sax Man, you hear a voice sample. It goes, oh! And then if he dies, it goes, oh no! And the saxophone sample, the whole solo stops. So it's really hard to get the Sexy Sax versions of the songs in the game because they're not available in the sound test, which is what's called the PAPRIUM boombox. So when you pause the game, the music still plays, but it gets really, really quiet. So what I did was I played until I got to Intercom on very hard, waited until Sexy Sax Man came out, and paused the game, which is good because the saxophone solo keeps going, and then I just boosted the volume level. So we're going to listen to a little bit of the Sexy Sax version of Asian Chill. And it might sound a little funky because, like I said, I had to boost the volume from the really low levels, and but I think it's totally serviceable for the show. So let's give that a quick listen, and we'll come back, and then Trev will have you talk a little bit about what Sexy Sax is all about.
Alrighty.
Those runs.
Every time. That is pretty master. is going in.
I love the little horn stabs during the guitar part. All right, so that was the sexy sax version of Asian Chill. It's really interesting. It does change the feel of the song a lot. I think it
For sure.
some of the instruments do drop out, and then the sax kind of takes over. So I'm curious, Trev, when I first listened to it, I was like, oh, I wonder if like maybe Tito programmed these in. Like, was it really part of the song, or did you guys compose the music and then Fonzie took it out and then added, just added it in for, was it originally part of the song, or was it added in after the fact? So what's the whole story behind this?
So I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to give it a 90% sure on this. After we were pretty much done with the soundtrack, we got a call basically that Fonzie wanted to add this guy in because it's Fonzie, right? So we're like, okay, and I was like, but Groove Master, I'm in the middle of making another album that I'm going to release soon. And he's like, don't worry, I got it. I believe he got a chance to get me back for tweaking all of his solos. He's like, Dredd's not going to mess with these ones. That's my guess. I could be wrong. Anybody who worked on it with us, if they show up in the comments, feel free to correct me. But that's my guess.
That's funny. And so, again, and I think I was joking about you with it before we started recording. I was like, he's going to solo over your solos just to get you.
Yeah. This isn't even my final form. Yeah.
It's fun, though, because, like I said, it breaks up the music a little bit. It gives you a little bit of extra reward for playing on the harder difficulty levels. It adds a little bit more challenge, but it's not like a challenge where you are in any peril. You're just trying to keep this guy alive as long as you possibly can. I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows at this point if there's any benefit besides listening to the music of keeping Sexy Sax Man alive. I've gone through several levels where I've been able to keep him alive the whole time, but it doesn't seem to give me any extra points. It doesn't do any bonuses.
That was my thought. I was wondering the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, everybody needs a little bootleg Careless Whisper in their life,
Exactly. Exactly. Some good old-fashioned 80s sax solos. But it might even be that you have to get through the whole game never letting him die, which is really hard to do.
That sounds like something Fonzie would require for some crazy...
Exactly. I think there's a couple of things that you can unlock. You can get a special badge on your save file by never using Blue, which is basically your power-up thing. So the city has this drug called Blue, B-L-U, and you use it by pressing the A button. You can pick up pills along the way, and you can stock up to 8 of them. And when you do, you get a limited amount of time where you can do these special attacks, which are really effective against bosses and large crowds of enemies. And so if you go through an entire run of the game without ever using it, you get a special badge, and you get these badges on your save file, and they kind of accumulate as you do stuff. So,
almost like achievements, right?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the achievements will also unlock stuff as well. So, like, if you beat a boss on your very last guy with no continues left, that particular boss will give you a badge where once you beat the game, your health bar gets longer. So it's stuff like that, where sometimes you get a benefit from it. Sometimes it's just something on the screen that you can show off to your friends or whatever. So, but I don't know if there is a Sexy Sax badge available. It would be cool if you get a little saxophone, if you can keep him alive for an entire run of the game or something like that, but nobody's been able to do it as far as I know so far. He does show up in a lot of places. He shows up in boss areas sometimes, too. There's a track we'll be playing later on, which takes place in a particularly difficult and very cramped boss fight, where the sax guy is just kind of sitting in this arena where you're fighting these bosses. So he makes it hard. Definitely makes it hard. I don't know. Any other comments before we move on to our next track?
Yeah, I mean, the game really wants you to play it multiple times. It's not one of those kind of games where you can just play it once, finish it, and be like, oh, I saw everything. Like, The game really wants you to keep playing, keep investing time in, play it through it multiple times. It's a time suck, but it's a rewarding time suck, for sure.
For sure.
It's really trying to push the most out of that 80 megs of extra power, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, let's see, there's 3 different runs. You have to do 4 times each, so that's 12. So to get the best ending of the game, you have to play at least 13 runs on one save file across 4 different
and you guys still aren't
levels.
sick of the soundtrack. I'm humbled.
Still.
No.
That's beautiful.
I've played the games. I can't even. I did one save file where I got the quote-unquote bad ending, which is kind of what you have to do before you get the good ending. And so that was like a dozen runs right there. And so I'm still going. Now I'm at the PAPRIUM difficulty, and I'm trying to beat every single route 4 different times and then going to the final route. So I'm about halfway through that. So I can't even count the number of hours I've played this game so far. And still...
Do you get anything from beating it on easy, or... Because I just started on hard.
Yeah,
and now I'm on very hard.
You can get some of the badges. Like I said, if you beat a particular boss on your last guy, even if you're playing on easy, you still get that badge. So once you beat the game, then you unlock everything that you've basically accumulated. So if your score is over 160,000 points, then you beat the game, and then you unlock the boombox so you can listen to the sound test. But if you have 160,000 points and you haven't beat the game yet, you don't get access to the boombox. So there's a bunch of different things that you can unlock regardless of your difficulty level, and then there's some stuff that you can only unlock if you're playing on very hard or PAPRIUM difficulty. So
thank you for unlocking the boombox for us, by the way, Ed.
Oh my God, that was my mission. That's how I got so good at the game, because I had this mission to do, because I needed to record the music from the hardware so that I could present it on the show. And so I spent hours and hours just grinding through this game to get a score high enough. And then I thought once I got the 160,000 that I would unlock the boombox automatically. And then I realized, like, I went on Twitter to, like, some of these people that were playing this game's hardcore, and they're like, no, you have to beat the game. You have to get the good ending, or the at least one of the endings to unlock the stuff that you earned by playing that. I was like, oh my God, so now I have to do all this, and then finally got the boombox.
Fonzie's like, all right, you can have the soundtrack, but you're going to work for it.
You're going to work for it. And it was rewarding, and it was great to be able to finally, like, sit down and listen to all these songs, you know, the way I wanted to without interruption. So it just made that whole experience so much more rewarding. So Fonzie might seem like a jerk with this stuff, but he's giving these things value, which I appreciate for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of value, our next track takes place at Bion Mart. Mike, what do we got coming up?
So next up, we've got a track called Cool Groove. And again, from the 2020 release of PAPRIUM, with our special guest, who also was one of the composers, Jredd.
All right, let's take a listen.
All right, welcome back. That was Cool Groove, which takes place in the Bion Mart level. And again, our guest host, Jredd, was the composer or co-composer on this, along with Groovemaster 303.
That's right. We had a great time with some of these tracks. And I remember with this one, I think we're like, we've got to use that Streets of Rage piano track somewhere. We've got to, like, because I believe that's the same sound that's used in those games, because you can rip instruments from Sega Genesis games.
Mm-hmm.
So I just had some chords and had some cool bass line, and I believe it's Groove Master on the drums and me on the bass and the piano.
Oh, that's cool. So it's like a little band playing.
Yeah.
Why'd you pick this one, Mike?
I thought that the jazzy vibe kind of made it sound like a neat mix between Streets of Rage and PAPRIUM, and it has some nice flourishes in there that definitely embellish the idea of it being a more jazzy track. But then those, I guess, synth guitars kind of come in, and they kind of sound Capcom-esque. So, kind of funny that we were talking about Capcom guitars earlier. I definitely got like a strong Capcom vibe, almost as if like this was what Capcom would have sounded like had they made more games on the Genesis and had the power of, what they did on the Super NES kind of, moved over to the Genesis. So it was cool. It was interesting to listen to.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I like that.
That's cool, yeah. I also like that the extra sound channels gave you guys a lot of ability for little accompaniments, little counter melodies. There's a really nice run in there where there's the lead synth. It's kind of, center in the mix. And then there's a kind of a little more like ethereal version of that playing in the right channel. And it just makes it sound so much, thicker and...
Little pearl drops in each ear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thick with 2 C's. Hot. And it's cool because this is a shopping area. So this takes place in front of a whole bunch of stores where you're just kind of beating guys up, and there's escalators that go up and down, and you can kick them down the escalators and they'll fall to their death. There's moms and kids in the background, and the moms are protecting the kids and the kids are crying. Enemies are shopping with shopping carts, and you can just kick them while they're shopping back and forth, and then they start attacking you. And so it's cool how these areas are not just backdrops. It's not just some of the lower budget 16-bit beat-em-up games where it's the same thing over and over again, just the background looks different. But they really brought elements of those areas into the gameplay of each stage, which I really appreciate about this. Shows that a lot of effort went into making this PAPRIUM city feel full and vibrant.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on in the background that you wouldn't normally see in a 16-bit title. And I think this is one of the tracks that we kind of doubled up, where that brass lead is both sampled and FM layered on top of one another. So that's why it sounds so thick and rich.
Okay. Regarding this track, or really the entire soundtrack, were you given any kind of direction regarding matching up what the song should sound like in terms of genre, as compared with what was happening, for example, with the shopping and all that stuff? Because this does definitely give off that vibe of, hey, this is music that you might hear when shopping at a mall or something like that.
Yeah,
in the background. Muzak, yeah. More like extreme Muzak.
It's your extreme shopping trip where you're going to turbo mode before the store closes. But
right.
Actually, one of the main people behind helping us was actually Tulio. I don't believe he's part of Watermelon Games anymore because there were some creative differences, but at that time he was, and he was really good about getting us mock-ups of what the levels looked like and getting descriptions to us. And so that was very appreciative. What was neat about my experience is we were basically allowed to do what we wanted, but we were just given encouraging guidance. I never really felt like I was stifled, you have to do this or you have to do that. Even though the waiting for the game was kind of excruciating sometimes, the actual act of working on it and everybody, being excited about what was eventually going to come out was actually a really positive experience.
Have you talked with Groove Master or any of the other people that you knew who worked on it, since its release? And have you guys kind of looked back on it with warm memories, or was it more like a kind of bittersweet sort of thing?
I would say that Groove Master and we look back on it with fond memories because it's kind of hard not to bond with somebody when you're working on a track that long. And we've done things before that, so we already knew we worked well together. So for the two of us, for sure, and I'd like to get in contact with Tito again, the main person behind the tracker, and get on Zoom and have a drink with him or something. Because cheers, man, it's out. So
yeah,
right, yeah.
That's cool. Well, it's good that it's got that you have fond memories of it. So Fonzie said that he's going to ship you a game, but you haven't gotten the game in the mail yet, right?
No, I need to check my mail more often. That might be partially my fault, but so far I haven't gotten it. Sometimes I'm just holed up in my my little cave here while the world outside is going crazy.
Yeah. So at least when you are playing the game, you'll have good memories to look back on, and
Yeah.
It's got to be a surreal experience too, like playing a game and hearing music that you wrote playing in the background of it. I can only imagine what that feels like.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the other thing that's really kind of surreal is for everybody else, this music is new, and for me, it's nostalgic. So I have to keep reminding myself that other people don't know this as intimately as you do. So if you're like, oh, that's not how that's supposed to go, I think there's a glitch in the program nobody else is going to know. So stop giving it away, Jredd.
Speaking of which, actually, so there are some notable differences between how, if you actually go to Groove Master's YouTube channel, he's got some samples of the soundtrack directly exported from the tracker, and it does sound, I'm not going to say significantly different, but there are some notable differences, like especially on Asian Chill, when we were talking about the guitars in the background with the solo over it. The guitars are way more understated in that section of the song, and the lead is much more prominent.
Volume levels, things, and there's as we get into it, you might hear it's like the arpeggios doing different things than what they should have done. I'll try and I'm bringing out some of those. Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's running at all is amazing to me. But on the other hand, like, there's that OCD side of me that's like, no, I want to fix that.
Right.
Yeah.
But overall, I'm very, very happy that it's out, and I'm very, very happy to be here talking with you two fine gentlemen.
And we're so happy to have you as well. And like you keep asking me if I'm getting tired of the soundtrack, and it's just a testament to the quality of it that I'm not. That I've played it so much, and I'm still just humming these songs, and I've got, I've had several PAPRIUM tunes as ringtones on my phone as I've chosen favorite ones over and over again. So the exception to that is the following track, which I have PTSD for, but it's Mike's pick, so I can't take it out of the show. What do we got coming up next, sir?
Yeah, it's interesting with this one and with all of them, because my experience was much different than yours when it came to playing the game. You kind of dove into it head first to unlock every little nook and cranny, and I'm kind of approaching it on more of a slow drip, and especially when it came to the music and getting the music into the game, I actually took all the music and separated it from the YouTube links and then chopped it up basically, which took a couple hours to do over time, and then I put all that on my phone because that was the only way I was going to fully experience all or most of the music in the game. For whatever reason, listening to the music while playing the game felt like more of a distraction. And so I wanted to hear the music solo. And when I did, this was one of the tracks that really stood out to me. This is Neon Rider, which takes place in the Ice Factory level.
All right, we'll be right back. All right, that was Neon Rider, which plays in the Ice Factory level. Again, from the game, PAPRIUM, written by Trevin Hughes and David Burton. So this is Mike's pick. I have some connotations with this song, but first I want to hear why you chose this one, Mike.
Oh man, that panning was what really, that, two reasons. The panning was insane. So if you listen to that on like a mono setup or like through your phone, which, why are you listening to this on your phone? Like, plug in some headphones. Come on, people. But yeah, you gotta listen to this on headphones, because the panning on those instruments are insane, because there's so many different layers of panning.
Yeah.
So you've got that main melody, you know, kind of going back and forth, but then you start adding on all these other layers of the song, which that in itself kind of, I mentioned it before, that I had to separate myself from the game experience to hear the music on a separate level. So I took those MP3s, threw them on my phone, and got in my car, and I drove around. Like, I think I went for like an hour and a half, 2-hour drive, just listening to the soundtrack, just so I could understand it, and so I could like digest it through my ear holes and into my brain. And in doing that, I was able to appreciate it outside of the game, which made me appreciate it more inside of the game, which made it more engaging while I was playing. I know that sounds weird, but like, there was no way I was going to be able to play through the game and be like, oh yeah, you remember that level? That's my favorite song. You know?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of chaos going on in the game and a lot of other sound effects, so I totally get what you're saying, where it's like, you kind of want to take the music and isolate it and really be able to like dig into it deeper so that you could, you know, kind of absorb it.
Yeah, that second part though, that really hooked me, is anytime in a Genesis track, you'll hear like a wah,
the sweep
sound. Yeah. Oh my goodness, I love that. Like, that just makes me melt.
Definitely the strength of FM synthesis, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Big sample on the SNES to do that, whereas like Genesis has it prepackaged. So
absolutely,
there's downs to either, sample or FM. Yeah.
So Trev, you had a mashup that you were talking about while we were listening to the track, which I found really funny and really accurate. So what was that?
Well, the first half was definitely Just for Kid inspired, and probably as soon as I say it, even though this isn't like a 13-minute track, you'll probably be like, oh, okay, I get it. But then the second half, and I don't even know if I completely realized it when I was composing it, but listening back, it's definitely Terminator. I didn't mean to rip it off, but we just did so many tracks. It's like, well, it kind of fits with the theme of the game, right? You know, like kind of dystopian, like post-apocalyptic future. So, I mean, it's kind of in your subconscious.
Yeah. That's...
I when I was listening to it, like hearing you say those two back to back, it makes sense. I definitely got Terminator from that sweep, but I would say Terminator and like the Streets of Rage 2 intro.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like if those two kind of hooked up and had a kid.
I like that.
Yeah, I like the...
You're not wrong.
It's like the militaristic snare rolls definitely reminded me of Terminator, especially Terminator 2. And then that lead sound is like just so sad sounding. It's weepy. The SNK versus Capcom game, the one that came out on the Neo Geo, uses a really similar synth for a lot of their songs. And that's a really sad soundtrack too, especially for a fighting game. It really kind of sticks out as being kind of a weird mood for a fighting game. And that's what it reminded me of too. It's this very round kind of ooh kind of sound.
I say this a lot on my show, but the Master System always sounds very sad sounding to me.
Yeah, very minor tones.
And, a lot of minor tone sounds, and I often wonder what this would sound like if it was utilizing the PSG a little bit more.
Interesting. Very interesting. More ARPs in there.
Interesting.
The reason why I have negative connotations for this song is because currently I'm not going to say stuck, but I am at a part on PAPRIUM difficulty where I am trying to get through the GOS run, the Golden of Seas run. The Golden of Seas is this boat that you fight on at the for the last stage, and you start off in this area called the 888 block, which is one of the characters. His name is Dice. You start off in his apartment when you start the game fresh, and depending on what route you take and where you die, you'll get captured, and you will start in a different area. So the Ice Factory is one of the places where you start if you die on the Golden of Seas route. So this has been my starting level forever, trying to get through this run, and I've done it. I've beaten the boss. What happens when you beat a boss is you can choose to throne your character. You basically make your character the boss of that route. And then you have to go through the route again with a different character 3 more times. And your character that you throned will give you 3 different missions, 3 bonus levels at the end of each route. And so to finally complete a route, you need to beat the boss, throne your character, and then do it 3 more times and do those 3 missions. And that's considered a complete route. So I've done it, and I've throned my character, and I beat a mission, and then I went through again and got a game over. And you're not supposed to save when you get a game over, because if you're playing on PAPRIUM difficulty, if you save after you get a game over, you lose the throned character, and you have to do the whole thing
brutal.
all over again.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
And I didn't realize this, and there's this really talented PAPRIUM player online called The Wizard Who Says Knee. He streams, and then he also uploads his stuff to YouTube. I've been talking with him on Twitter a lot, just telling him he's been my inspiration. He's helped me get through a lot of this stuff with the techniques he's been showing off. And so I tweeted at him today. I was like, I keep losing my throne. Does this happen to you? What's going on? And he's like, oh yeah, if you save it after you die, you lose your throne. And I was like, oh man, if I knew that, I wouldn't have been, because it gives you the option to save after you die, and you can select no, and then you'll just, you won't get the score and everything that you accumulated from that run, but you'll also get to keep your missions. So that's why I haven't like PTSD from this particular track, because this just reminds me of starting on this route over and over and over again. And it is a great song.
So if you get a game over and you start the game again, do you start at the beginning of the game, or do you start where you left off?
It saves your progress. Like I said, you start in this ice factory instead of in Dice's apartment. So it's cool. Kind of like you start on the far left side of the city. You always start on the far left and have to make your way to the far right. So you always start on the far left at the beginning of a route, but it could be a different location depending on where you died. And then eventually you'll get back to the Asian Chill section, the Bayan Mart section from this ice factory, and then journey on your way towards the end of whatever route that you're trying to complete. So you can start in a penitentiary. Yeah, you start in a hospital, a penitentiary, the ice factory, or the apartment. I think those are the 4 places you can start depending on where you die in the game. So
yeah, I believe the Wizard Who Says Knee was the first person I saw on YouTube to upload.
And he's been uploading full runs.
Yeah,
he did the sound test too. I think I linked him for you guys so that you can hear the sound test as it from a hardware recording.
So of the 3 characters, Tug, who's this giant kind of beefy Hagar type character from Final Fight, style.
Yep.
Or what's his name, Max, I think, from Streets of Rage, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then there's Alex, who's kind of like the Blaze Fielding, or Maki from Final Fight 2. And then you've got Dice, who is, I don't know, kind of like a Guy or Cody, kind of like faster.
He's a middle range brawler.
Yeah, your standard brawler. Who would you say that you played as the most in all your runs at?
Actually, it's one of the unlockable characters. His name is Baba.
That's right. Yeah, there's 2 unlockables, right? There's Baba. Is Baba the one with its missing arms?
There's 4 unlockables, actually.
Oh, 4 unlockables?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
okay, then.
There's Baba and Electra. Baba is this kind of old hippie guy, which is really cool because, Fonzie is French, and he speaks French and English, but this character that you meet, he's in the Green Cross area, which is kind of like a little Tokyo, Chinatown kind of area. So Baba in Chinese means father, and Baba in French means hippie. So this is kind of like a grandfatherish hippie guy. So he's a Baba in 2 different senses, which I thought was a really creative way to name him. Cool. He's a very aerial kind of fighter. He's got a really powerful jumping attack and some really quick hits. So I've been playing with him a lot. He's like my go-to guy. Elektra is this kind of robotic, feminine character with like a shock of blonde hair, no arms, kind of like a mannequin come to life almost.
Right.
Lots of kicks and stuff. She's okay. I haven't played with her that much. She's got a really long health bar, which is great, but her attacks aren't my favorite. You can play as Spinal, who is a shark, a literal shark that crawls across the ground and can hit people.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you can't throne him. He's kind of like a bonus character where once you unlock him, you have to like move like the character select screen, like you go off the screen, and you'll be able to select him as a secret. And then there's Rondo, who is a boss character who's only available in the arena mode, which is kind of like a survival mode kind of a thing. And he's just this giant green guy with very powerful punches. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not able to use him in the story mode, so I haven't really done much with him. But so altogether, there are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 playable characters in the game.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah, 6 of which
Pretty
you can play in
rad,
the story mode. So,
Cool.
so yeah, Baba's first for me. Who do you play most as?
Well, I've only officially played the game twice. I beat it on hard with Alex first, and then I went back through because I wanted to try the Sega CD add-on feature. So I started playing as Tug, and then I ended up using Dice as my computer player. And I got stuck maybe 5 levels in, where I just couldn't. I was playing on very hard at that point.
Yeah.
And I could not get past this one boss, and I think I made the mistake of saving after I got a game over, because it went back to the main screen. I was like, oh well, I want to at least save my progress, so whoops, don't do that.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't thrown anybody, saving is fine, because it'll at least save your score, so you can get that accumulated score to start unlocking stuff. So once you do finally beat the game, you'll get all that stuff. Yeah, so I feel like we've talked enough for now. We've got another track coming up. So we're going to go and move on to our next quote-unquote chapter of the show. This is music from the Police HQ route. So if you're going from the topmost route to the bottommost route, this is the second from the top. So this would be the skyscrapers, the upper middle class of the PAPRIUM city, and Police HQ would be the last level. And there's 2 tracks that play in Police HQ. I chose one track, and Trevin chose the second track. So we're going to listen to the first one first, of course. This is Retro Beat from Police HQ Act 1. You're going to see a lot of Yuzo Koshiro in this one, right, Trev?
It's not Streets of Rage, I swear.
All right, let's take a listen. We'll be right back.
But it's close enough.
Yeah, it's very close. It's super close. That's why I chose it. All right, that song was appropriately titled Retro Beat. That was from Police HQ Act 1. This is one of my picks for the show. And I think the reason for that should be fairly apparent. This is a very nice homage to the Streets of Rage soundtracks. I think Yuzo Koshiro would be quite proud of you guys, Jredd.
I appreciate that. We were definitely going for it.
Daddy Kosh,
Yeah,
as we like to call him.
Yeah, I mean, the dead giveaway is those hi-hats. Those are definitely Streets of Rage hi-hats.
That's funny that you mentioned that, because I think the one who started off this track was me, and I had the bass and the PSG chords. And then I think it was Groove Master that came in with those hats, and I'm like, oh, I know what we're doing.
I see where you're bringing this one.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, to me, it almost feels like, like you play those games with people where you like draw a little part and then somebody else draws a little bit more, and it kind of like you don't know what it's going to be until until people start adding pieces, and then so it really feels like how you're describing this is like the track is kind of like a small idea that kind of grows into a fully fledged kind of track. So when you guys start working on a song, do you kind of discuss the sound that you want, or is it more of an organic process like that?
It's pretty organic. It's like I'll send something to Groove Master, and he'll be like, "Oh, that's cool. Let me take a look at that." And he'll add something and send it back to me. And like a lot of times, like I'll be working on one song and he'll be working on another one, and then we'll switch, which is crazy to think about. But we just, I guess we just know each other so well that we're just kind of like, just to keep that creative energy going, and not get too stale on one song, to just kind of, once the energy is high, you got to strike while the iron is kind of hot. So,
yeah, for sure.
It's a cool way to do it, to just kind of like, okay, I'm stuck here. Okay, let me take a look at that. So.
I like how when you first told me that these tracks were written back in 2013, which I think I knew a while ago, because I think even when we recorded episode 2 of VGMbassy together, you had already finished this album, and you just couldn't. You told me that it existed, but you're like, I can't play anything for you. Like, I can't. We all thought the game would be coming out in a year or so.
Yeah, I signed an NDA, so
that makes sense.
So. Doesn't matter now.
Exactly. Now it's all free game. But that 2013-ness really shines through in parts of this soundtrack, especially because like dubstep was really kind of at its peak at that point. Yeah. And there's a part at the end of this track where it's not necessarily dubstep, but it does what a lot of dubstep artists were doing at the time, where it would create a pattern or a melody made up of several different instruments or sound effects, and there's like that boot up, doodle-doo-doo, doodle-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo.
Yeah, kind of rapid, kind of call and response type of thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of really indicative of only the music that was coming out in that little like 5-year time span. So I was like, wow, that's really dubsteppy. I really like that.
Hoping that like sound, like by the time this game comes out, it's like, oh, we're not going to be out of date, are we?
Genesis music is timeless.
It's a retro throwback game anyhow, so it's like, hey, retro modern-ish.
I was super into dubstep, so I was really happy to hear those little callbacks to that genre. So it's all good for me.
I'm glad it made you happy. It makes us happy too.
Any thoughts on this tune, Mike?
I really dug the panning. I know I keep saying that, but
no, I agree.
It's really cool to hear, especially in that ascending and descending melody. That definitely caught my ear. The later part of the track didn't do as much for me. Not that it was bad, but it felt like more homage to Streets of Rage, whereas that beginning part felt more like you guys in a way. So it almost felt like you both set it up together, and then you kind of let the nostalgia ride out the rest of the track.
That's fair.
Sense. Yeah. I like there's a little bit of like a warbly, almost kind of like a shamisen kind of a sound in the middle there too, where it was kind of like very chimey. It kind of rang out in both speakers. And that was fun. So, I mean, this song just really kind of takes on a whole bunch of different little personalities, and kind of, I think, like, kind of says, oh, Koshiro did this, let's do our spin on this, and Koshiro did that, let's put our spin on that. So, it's kind of a fun little romp through a lot of different, Yuzo Koshiro styles, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely it was a huge tribute to him.
Yeah, for sure. And it's immediately apparent, and it doesn't feel like a ripoff. It definitely feels like an homage.
I'm glad,
because
we were wondering.
So there's only one place in the game where the music kind of changes on its own, which is really weird, and that's here. And it's really cool that we're playing both of these tracks back to back. As you're playing through this Police HQ level, you're hearing this retro beat song, and then once you get to a certain screen, once the retro beat loop pops in, it immediately switches to Spiral. It's not like that you're getting to a different level and the song ends abruptly and then Spiral starts. They really kind of play off each other really well, which is why I like that we're playing these two songs back to back. So, Jredd, you picked this one. This is Spiral from Police HQ Act 2, and this is getting towards the final boss of the Police HQ route. So let's give a listen to that one. We'll be right back.
That was Spiral in the Police HQ level. That was by myself and Groovemaster 303.
And a great tune it is. I know you said that this particular track uses all the channels in the Datenmeister sound chip, and it definitely sounds like it. There's a lot going on here. So, I don't know, can you kind of describe a little bit of how this track came to be?
Well, we started off with that bass line, the nice FM bass line, and I believe it was actually Groovemaster that kind of started with the intro, but then I started kind of adding little flourishes to the bass. And as we went along, we just kept adding more and more layers, and I'm like, I think this is going to be the one that's going to do it. It's going to use everything. We have to do at least one track that uses, like I said before, we were used to using, stock Genesis switches. You've got one sample channel and you use loops, or you use power chords or things to make the most out of it. And this here, we just had so much power. We didn't really know what to do with it half the time. This time we're like, let's use all of it. So.
And it's funny because you're using all those channels and there's still room in the Genesis sound chip for all the sound effects to play, and so nothing drops out when you're playing the game with sound effects and stuff. So it's just super crazy how many simultaneous sounds you can play. Mike, what's your impression of this tune?
It's a little overboard, but I like it.
Yeah, it's a lot going on, but I wouldn't have it any other way. It's funny because we all kind of mentioned, Ed in particular said, I'm glad that Jredd picked this because I would have picked it. And I said the same thing. Like, I actually did put this on my list, and then I scrolled up and saw that you had picked it. So I was like, well, I'm going to take advantage of that and use my spot for a different track. But
I think all of us did a bit of that.
Yeah, for sure. This track has a lot going on, but I love that bass groove in the beginning. That's definitely the focus point for me. And as the song kind of morphs and builds into this behemoth in all the right ways, it's not overwhelming. It's just such a good song to vibe out to and listen to, where you can just get lost in the track, and it's almost like a Chris Hulsbeck track in the sense that you don't know where it's going, but it's going to take you on a journey, and just hold on for the ride. The audio ride. That definitely felt like that's how this track went.
Yeah.
It took me for a ride in a non-Marvel vs. Capcom 2 way.
Thank God. I do.
Yeah.
I really like that Holzbeck comparison too, because Holzbeck composes in a way where there's no rests. It's just balls to the wall, sound from beginning to end, and this track has that too. There's definitely a lot of disparate parts and different moods that go on, but there's just this driving engine behind it all that kind of moves it all along without ever stopping to look back to where it's been.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, my favorite part is those little staccato orchestra hits, but they're like softer than your traditional orchestra hits. It's kind of like a bell pad kind of a hit almost, and it just adds much.
You talking about the Metroid sound? It sounds almost like Metroid. That boop, 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 boop.
No. I'm talking about like the those ba 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 ba, and then it just like it's
okay.
Right.
those big samples.
Orchestra hit like
a synth
paired
right?
with choir stabs or something.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's a little bit brighter than your traditional orchestra hit, and like I said, it sounds a little softer. So I think it hits hard because it's paired directly with Retro Beat, and Retro Beat, while it's a very good song, is a little bit thinner sound, especially compared to this. It's a little bit thinner sound.
Yeah.
It's got a much more retro Genesis sound.
Definitely fair. That's very true.
So when you're listening to Retro Beat, you're like, yeah, just grooving on this Genesis tune, and then you're immediately reminded that, oh, there's way more sound that can come out of this Genesis than we're listening to right now, and so I think it just makes it sound that much more impressive. So
I gotta wonder. The track is based on the fact that you're in a police headquarters, and I don't know about you, but knowing that and playing the game and listening to this song, it kind of harkened back to Streets of Rage 4 in a way, because there's a level in Streets of Rage 4 where you're going through a police headquarters. Now, the music is totally different, so it's not a fair comparison, but I almost feel like Streets of Rage 4 kind of stole a little bit of PAPRIUM's thunder, and I wonder if maybe that's part of the reason, and this is just mere speculation and wild ridiculousness on my part, but I gotta wonder if maybe Fonzie saw Streets of Rage 4, saw how good it was, saw that police headquarters stage, and thought, oh, my game has a police headquarters. I gotta release this thing now. And I gotta wonder if that was a kick in the butt for him to finish working on the game. I'm sure that he was working on it, and everybody that did their part already was, I'm sure that they wanted the game to come out, but I really gotta wonder if that level in Streets of Rage 4 made him want to finish PAPRIUM, get it tested, get it finalized, get everything out, and put the game on a cart and send it out. I gotta wonder about that.
Very possible.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't tell you, but that's not a bad theory.
It's also possible that he's like, oh, it's a police level. I've got to put this banger of a Spiral track in the background to distract people from the fact that it's a similar level.
Right.
They'll be too busy jamming out to Spiral to realize what they're doing.
Yeah. It's interesting because this game and that game are built so much more different when you compare the two. And, you almost want to compare them just because that's a new game that came out, and this is a new game that came out. But this is a new game that's not referencing a direct prequel in a way. It's a game that has no legacy other than the legacy that it is built on its own. So the music, the levels, everything can't really be compared with something like Streets of Rage 4 overall, because this just feels like such a weird project that has been in the making for so long. It's almost as if like time has stood still, despite the fact that it's been 7 years since the game's been working on.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I was in like a Bermuda Triangle or something and came out and like to a dimension where PAPRIUM actually came out.
Yeah. We had to go through 2020 in order to get PAPRIUM. Like, think about that. The game came out.
Feels like it.
Yeah,
that's our reward.
That was our reward, exactly. Like, that was what we... Like, if somebody told me at the beginning of the year, they were like, all right, here's the deal. You got to stay inside. You got to avoid everybody. All your concerts are canceled for the entire year. But PAPRIUM finally comes out. You got to wonder, like, would you do it if you had a choice?
I don't know, man.
It's kind of risky. I don't know.
A lot of this game, though, the concepts for this game, a lot of it was crowdfunded, too. So it wasn't even like it was just Fonzie's singular vision. Watermelon's Magical Game Factory website had this area where you could purchase watermelon coins or whatever they called them. I don't remember what the credit was called.
Currency.
Yeah,
And the more currency you had, the more say you had in what happened.
Exactly. So Fonzie would put up these things. It's like, well, what genre? I think it started off basic. It was like, what genre do you want the game to be? And people voted beat 'em up. Do you want a really long linear game? Do you want a game with branching paths? And people would vote on that. You know, how many playable characters or blah, blah, blah. What kind of setting would you like the game to take place in? Fantasy, sci-fi, dystopian, whatever. So a lot of these things were based on what the crowd wanted, which is why also I think that even though it does have these pieces that kind of pay homage to Final Fight and Street Fighter and some of the other more prominent beat-em-ups out there, that's purely as we're just tipping our hat because you're the inspiration for this game, but it wasn't like we want to make a pseudo sequel to Streets of Rage or something like that. So
I remember following it back when it was called like Project Y or something.
Project
like
Y
that.
was the initial.
Yeah. So I've been following this game for years. I knew about Pure Solar, which was Watermelon's first game, and it appealed to me, but I was like, you know what? I'm not going to pick it up, and maybe that was a mistake because I've heard the game is great, but like, when this game was announced and the screenshots started to leak, I was like, all right, this I'm on board for 100%.
You're like, my inner masculinity is bursting at the seams. Give it to me, right?
That's right. It's floating everywhere. Juice is flowing.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the early stages of it because something I didn't really mention at the beginning. It was touted as being 40 megs, and it didn't really jump up to 80 megs until they got more funding, more backers. So one of the interesting things that we did with the sound when we were loading samples into the tracker is we actually recorded some sounds at lower bit rates to save space. Mm-hmm. So that's why some drums and some samples have a bit of a crunchy sound to them where other things are more clean, because we discovered that we were going to have more space for them. Like, so we could add higher quality samples. And that was kind of a bit of a hurdle to work through as we were working on the game, because when you load lower quality samples into that tracker, it sometimes will detune them. And so we had to manually retune some of the samples in the game. And so that was kind of we had different people, Julio helped us with that a bit. And, I was trying to use my ear. I have a pretty good ear for stuff like that. So we got it done. But like, I think some people noticed on certain hardware that like there were some things that were slightly out of tune, just depending on what you had. It wasn't enough to really bother people, but people with keen ears kind of picked up on it, and that might be why. But I'm glad that it came out as good as it did, considering everything. So.
Right. Yeah.
I think I remember at one point, Trev, you were worried that they were going to have to take the extra sound channels out, right? I think I remember that. I
was wondering about it because, Fonzie was saying like, I didn't get the shipment of chips in time, and there was all kinds of. So I was like, are they gonna have to scale back? I wasn't sure, but I'm glad it came out, and I'm glad. I guess if we had to go through 2020, we had this at the end of the tunnel, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that was my first worry too when I got the email like, the game is shipping. The first thing I did was like try to find out were they able to add the extra memory in there? Were the songs going to be represented as you guys wanted them to be? I was really worried that they were going to have to be scaled down versions, and I was like the game, whatever. I'll play the game. It'll be good. It'll be bad. Whatever. I just want to make sure the music is what it should be, and I'm so glad that it was at least like 90% what you guys intended.
Yeah, it's close enough for me, and I'm just kind of like, if they release a soundtrack, which I think they ought to, I think people are clamoring for it. And the perfect way I do that is to use the tracker files themselves and just make, MP3s or WAV files or whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly how we intended it to sound. Because we didn't have a development cart necessarily or an emulator to run that on, because never had been done before. So,
right.
Pioneers, that's what you guys were.
We'll see what happens.
All right, so let's move on to our next chapter of the show. This is music from the, I don't know how it's pronounced, but I'm going to call it Bhopal. Bhopal, B2 root, Bhopal. This is the underground route, so this is the lowest of the roots, of the 4 roots, and this goes through the real dregs of society, subways and just underground bars and stuff. Some of the most aggressive and dark music in the game, so of course I picked most of it. Our first track is going to be...
industrial fan, right?
Yeah, exactly. The first track is going to be Indie Breakbeat. This plays in the Aqua World level. This level starts off where you're on top of a subway train, and the beginning of the level is this subway train kind of rolling through this underground, and you're like smashing all of these enemies, like running them over. I really love the way this song starts because it fits so well with what you see on the screen. So let's take a listen. We'll be right back. All right, that was Indie Breakbeat from the Aqua World level from PAPRIUM. And like I said, I chose this track. This is actually one of my favorite tracks in the game. This is my ringtone right now, which I love because it starts so basic. It's dun 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 dun, and then it's funny because whenever anybody calls, they have to wait for me to pick up because I'm too busy listening to the track. I've always got to wait until the ride cymbals come in, and then I'm like headbanging, and then I'll finally answer the phone. And usually it's somebody
has to talk to somebody.
Yeah, exactly. It psychs me up because it's my work phone. So, and I'm working from home, so people are always calling me and bothering me with things. So, I need to have my little reward for being on call 24/7. Anyways,
they're like, all right, let's keep these technical difficulties in the rear. Right?
Yeah, it's funny the naming convention for a lot of these songs too, because this is indie breakbeat. But I feel like on the soundtrack, a lot of the songs that have the word indie in front of them is actually because it has kind of a Middle Eastern or an Indian flavor to it.
That's it.
Yeah, so it's cool.
It's not indie alt-rock, you know.
Right. Or independent, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And we keep forgetting to mention, which is why I want to do it now, those glitchy beats. This is very prominent in this
one.
So kind of, can you explain how you made those?
So basically, there were two different types of pitch slides that we'd use. One, it would be like, just kind of like that. And then there was another one that was kind of a slide along with a re-trigger. So imagine like one slide would be like going up and down a guitar string, like frets. You don't really hear a note restarting necessarily. And the other one is closer to, I'd say, like going down a piano. So like each time you hit a note, it like re-hits the percussive attack. So it was perfect for like percussive drum beats to kind of have, or something like that. And like I was saying earlier, that Tio really didn't think of that as a use for drum beats, but we did. So that's some of the techniques we picked up on and used in the track there, and people were like, "Whoa, what the heck?" So it was pretty fun.
Yeah, that's very cool stuff. This track is just relentless. It's dark. It's dancey. It's a lot of stuff that I love about video game music and music in general. I was talking about those ride samples where it's like, but then at the end of the measure, go and it'll kind of like scoot up a little bit. You get these little kind of like weird things that wouldn't normally happen in regular music, and you guys are really taking advantage of those samples and the ability to manipulate them to make these really weird original sounds. It's just so cool.
The PSG to me was the thing that stood out the most to me on this. Those little like loops and bleeps in the background, like throughout the track. It almost felt like a cartoon in a way, like you were being chased by like Wile E. Coyote or something like that.
Yeah,
it definitely made it feel like a very hurried, fast track, like you were running away from something. This one, I mean, no surprise to old school PixelTunes listeners, this one didn't really grip me as much as the rest, which is so typical because it's Ed's favorite.
Of course.
Or one of his favorite. Yeah, of course. I mean, but it wasn't a bad track. I liked listening to it. It was fun to listen to. It wasn't something that I went back to after listening to the soundtrack, whereas the more like bass heavy groove stuff or the really rocky type stuff, that was the stuff that more made me want to revisit it. But I did definitely get like an Indian flavor to this. So it had that worldly feel to Indian music that Indian music has. So I liked that twist on that take.
Cool. I think the intro with the subway car running over the enemies was definitely like, I started associating that with this tune, and I was doing this underground run over and over again, so I just kind of got into that groove of associating that cool scene, which I liked a lot, with the intro of this song. So I think the combination of the two of them made this, stand out for me a lot. Were there any influences that you remember when you started making this tune? Or actually, how much of this was you and how much of this was David?
I believe that starting off the track was me, but I believe a lot of the Indian Middle Eastern melodies that came through were kind of a combination of both of us. Groove Master might have like a basic idea of, and then I would maybe add more flourishes or something. Yeah, we kind of thought like, well, this city is supposed to be between like this one point, like you said, equidistant between Pyongyang and Tokyo, and so we were trying to get like a bunch of different types of Eastern influence. It's not just Asia, or it's not just Hong Kong. Like maybe India's in there as well. So we tried to change it up, and I figured since I've been doing music for quite a while, you kind of know that like maybe not everybody's going to like everything you create, but like you hope that most people will like something. So that's kind of the attack. We went to such a vast soundtrack. It's like, we'll just throw everything at the wall and try to produce the best we can. Hopefully everybody's going to have a favorite.
Makes sense to me. All right, so let's move on to our next song. Actually, I picked 3 tracks which happen to all exist in sequence in this run through the underground. So after Indie Breakbeat, which takes place in this rundown aquarium, you fight your way out of there through this weird kind of sea monster thing, and end up at the entrance to the Blue Bar, which is where Club Shuffle plays. And I really like this one because the very European-style arpeggios stick out to me a lot. And again, it's got a very dancey groove. It takes place in a club, so let's give this one a listen. We'll be right back. All right, that was Club Shuffle, which plays in the Blue Bar area. I really like this one, like I said, because of those really cool arps. It starts off with this fantastic bass groove, and then the drums. I believe the phrase that you picked, Jredd, was that Groove 303 was going ham on the drums. Which
he really was, yeah.
Super accurate.
It all started with him and his drums, and then I believe I added the bass, and then I started adding the C64 arpeggios, as you said, Ed.
Yep.
And yeah, as we kept going along, we just kept adding little bits here, and then Groove Master came in with the 303 Acid synth, which he sampled all of those. So it's cool that we can actually do stuff like that.
Yeah, you got like a very authentic sound.
Normally you wouldn't be able to do something like that on a Genesis without some trickery. So
yeah, and I tell you, that over the arps just sounds so good. It doesn't even sound chiptune anymore. It just sounds like you're listening to like a professionally produced dance song. I thought that was really cool, really good representation of what you can do with all of these sample and channels and FM channels and wavetable, like everything just working together in harmony is just a really good example of all the different sounds that you can make at once and working them together really well.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
I bet.
I really liked the reference you made before the break where you said that it sounds like a C64 was stuffed into a Genesis, and I'm imagining this like really bizarre like turducken sort of situation.
Just like a keyboard sticking out of the cartridge slot.
Yeah.
I would totally rock that. That's totally in my alley.
Hell yeah.
Delicious. Yeah, no, this track was delicious. This song was great. A lot of fun, funky groove to it. The drums definitely caught my ear in the beginning, and then it just kind of rolled into this like fun funk track. It was good stuff.
Yeah, a lot of glitchy snare rolls in here too, like in the previous one. This takes place in a club. It's called the Blue Bar. Blue, like as we said before, was the kind of drug that pervades all the underground areas. And so this is it's got like neon signs of like pills all over the place. So you can tell they're definitely like dealing the drug in this particular area. There's like flashing lights going. It's like, it gets really kind of like epilepsy inducing in this stage at places, and the music fits. It's a club song. Like, so was this song specifically written for that area? Did Fonzie say, look, we're gonna be doing a track in a seedy club and we need some seedy dance music to go along with it?
You know, I'm not sure. In fact, I think it was just Groove Master and I wanted to make a track like that.
Fair enough.
So I think in this case, maybe Fonzie's like, oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, serendipity.
So, yeah, happy accident sometimes.
Very cool. So let's kind of move on, because we're going through this underground area, and we've got a lot of music actually from this underground area that we're playing. The next track takes place at the very end of the Blue Bar, and it's one of my favorite tracks. Reasons for that will become super apparent as soon as we start playing it. You find yourself in this arena. It's a one-screen area, and you're fighting these two wrestlers that take turns kind of trying to aerial attack you and hanging on to the poles on either side of the arena, and their names are Romulus and Remus. If you're playing on very hard or PAPRIUM, this is the area where Sexy Saxman will also be sitting in the middle, where you have to try to avoid attacking him if you want to listen to the solo. But yeah, this one's got Fallen written all over it, so I had to throw it into the show. So let's give it a listen. This one is called Dark Rock. We'll be right back. Goodness gracious, I just fallen all over the floor. That was Dark Rock, which plays while you're fighting the wrestlers Romulus and Remus in a seedy arena at the back of the Blue Club. And yeah, holy cow. The first time I heard this, I was like, oh, Jredd made a song for me and put it in this game. That's really awesome.
Yeah. It's just for you, Ed.
You missed a killer joke opportunity there, Ed, at the beginning. You said, goodness gracious, and you didn't say Great Balls of Fallen.
Oh, that's a good one.
Whoa.
I got to use that. Now I can't because you said it, so just be ripping yours.
Right. Coming in strong tonight. I like it.
Definitely some strong Fallen vibes that I got from this one, for sure.
Yeah, and as I was talking about while we were listening to it, Tim Follin's Gauntlet soundtrack on the Amiga has a very Led Zeppelin feel, and I think this really captures that, whether it was intentional or not. You were talking about how you pitched the drums down, and like it has a very heavy, like John Bonham style drum kit. So all in all, it captures a lot of that stuff. It's got that kind of Jethro Tull whimsical kind of feel to it, but then it's also got that hard rock, but it's got those little glitchy parts in there and in here too. There's a little bit of stuttering, a little bit of the drum glitches, so it's got some of your flavor in there as well. What was the intention going into this track? Did you want to do like a Fallen tribute like you did for the Koshiro, or did it just kind of happen?
Kind of, yeah. Definitely wanted to do something with those types of solos that Fallen is known for, and that solo is definitely mine.
I could tell.
Yeah. And then the second part with the glitchy beats is, I think that's where Groove Master came in and we worked together on that. So a lot of times when you hear glitches, sometimes it's me, but a lot of times it's him, like figuring out a way to extend the track and make it interesting. That's kind of the story behind that one.
I thought it was funny because when we got together and we were talking about the VGMbassy theme song, which you wrote, which I didn't mention this show, but in case you were wondering, Jredd did write the theme song to this show.
That's me.
Part of our talking was like, well, I really love... I wanted it to be FM because I love FM music, and two of my favorite composers, Yuzo Koshiro and Tim Follen, I was like, if you could kind of integrate some of those musicalities into that theme song, that would be really cool.
Like, and those are my favorite too.
Exactly.
Friends, Ed.
So, which we have remained, and so you did that, and then hearing this, it's like it kind of made everything come full circle. I was like, wow, this is really cool. I was hearing, it was fun to play the game and hear stuff that I recognized as your contribution, but then also was kind of like, ooh, this kind of reminds me of the theme song to my own show, and it was like a really kind of personal moment in listening to a lot of this music. So I really appreciated that.
That's awesome.
Any extra thoughts on this one, Mike, before we move on to our next one, which I think is yours?
I think we nailed it.
Oh, the only one thing that I wanted to mention before we moved on is that, yes, Sexy Saxman does have a solo, but I think, and this is not that it's not a good solo, but I think it unfallenizes the song. You don't really hear saxophone solos in Fallen tunes, and the solo does fit with the music, and it sounds good, but as a Fallen fan, I much prefer the original hard rock version over the sexy sax. Sorry, Sexy Sax Man, but I gotta give it to Fallen on this one. Anyhow, I'm glad you picked this next track, Mike, because this is one of my favorites. I'm actually surprised you picked it because it's definitely an Ed track. Well, what do we got coming up next?
Yeah, next up is Dark and Power Mad, which is from the, I don't know, I'm gonna pronounce it Bopal
Go for
B2 level, which I'm assuming means Basement 2.
Yeah, this is the final level of the underground route, so let's glitch it out. We'll be right back.
welcome back to the VGMbassy and the episode for PAPRIUM with Jredd, one of the co-composers. That track was Dark and Power Mad, and it comes from the Bhopal Basement 2 or B2 level. I gotta say, even though that first Indian-themed track, the one that Ed went goo goo gaga for, even though that one, I don't want to say disappoint because everything in this soundtrack is great, but this stood out to me. And I think a big part of that, again, has to do with the panning of the sound effects and using the sound effects as musical leads.
Yeah.
Very industrial style there. And I really dig that. It sounded very mechanical and very crunchy. And then when those like Indian flavors kind of come in, it just kind of seals the track up in this nice aromatic flavor. It's almost as if a Sega Genesis took a trip, like a vacation to India, and this is the Sega Genesis trying to tell everyone what happened on its trip.
I like that.
Yes.
I like that a lot.
That's what's up.
Part of which involved getting kidnapped by the cartel and held for ransom at some point.
Yeah, a lot of those sound effects.
Took a lot of blue.
Yeah, took a lot of blue. Getting high off blue.
That point where it slows down and it gets really kind of shuffly, I really like that part. That stands out to me when I'm playing the game for sure.
You know, speaking of shuffle and going back to Club Shuffle or Blue Bar, it'd be funny if you snuck into the Blue Bar part. Like, you know that song, the I'm blue, I'm a diabada. It'd be really funny if you snuck in a few bars into the song from that. That'd be great.
Oh man, yep.
Just wait for the sequel.
Fonzie doing something like that. He's got that sense of humor for sure.
Yeah,
right,
sure.
right.
That's super funny. This track, like I said, one of my favorites too. It's glitchy. It's fun and interesting. It's dark, but it's not depressing dark. It's like. Right. Like a D-Generation X, WWE wrestling dark. They're the bad guys, but they also love to have fun at the same time,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. You're gonna have a party with these guys, yeah.
Exactly. And it's kind of like that indie breakbeat song. Like it does have those Middle Eastern Indian influences. It's dancey, but this one is just like corrupted somehow. It's just on steroids and it's angry and it needs to get all its emotions out before
to tell people that they need to suck it, like that sort of thing.
Exactly. Let's go ready to suck it.
Right.
Drink more blue, you wuss.
Yeah, exactly.
So, this is the last level of the Bhopal route, which is the underground route, and the two lower routes, the last levels of those routes, are long AF. They are like multiple screens, tons of enemies. Towards the end, there are boss rushes with enemies in between and very little health to keep you safe. You really have to earn your way towards the end of these levels. And especially like this track, like I was talking about, it's longer, it's super varied, like it's great that whether it was intentional or whether, it was just Fonzie choosing it for this particular level, it's great that this song appears in that level because it's just fun to listen to. So I can play this one over and over again as I'm kind of grinding my way through it, and the music is keeping me going, it's keeping me interested, it's keeping the action feeling fresh. So as a video game song, this one works really well, Trev.
I'm glad. I think in our production of the soundtrack, we were really starting to kind of master what the track.
Yeah, this feels confident.
Because we're doing so many crazy things, and it just we used that glitch effect to the max to kind of get that weird, like phasey. I think it was like a hi-hat sample that we kept pitching down and like glitching to make the weird, almost tonal sound. So pretty rad, weird stuff we ended up with.
Long AF. You're saying long and fun, right?
Yeah,
correct.
Of course.
Yeah. Long as fun times.
What else could it be?
All right, so let's kick it down a notch. We're going to move over to the GOS route. We've only got one representative song from the GOS route. GOS stands for Golden of Seas, which is the boat at the end of this route. This is the second route from the bottom. And I liked the track Sadness a lot. Again, the track starts in a very kind of poignant place in the game where you're walking down the docks and it starts to rain a little bit, and this thunderstorm just kind of comes out of nowhere. The rain is taking up the whole screen and enemies start coming at you. And Sadness, I think, is a really good description of the beginning of this song. I don't know so much about the end of the song, but we'll kind of talk about that as we go through it. This one also has a part in it where once I heard it, I cannot unhear it. And I'll leave it as a surprise, but see if you can figure out what I'm talking about. I'll mention it as we go through. I think I know. All right, so let's give it a listen. I'll be right back. All right, welcome back, Power Rangers. That was Sadness from the Docks, Act 2. I've been listening to this track a whole lot because I am currently grinding my way through the Golden of Seas route and spending a lot of time on the docks on the way to the boat. And this track, like I said before, it plays in a very memorable part in the game. And it starts off like, I think Sadness is a very good description of that kind of riff at the beginning. And then it gets a little more energetic, a little happier. The Go-Go Power Rangers part was just apparent. I don't know if I caught it the first time I played through this level. I was probably too caught up in, trying to get good. But after like a dozen times of playing through this level, I definitely I was like, Go-Go Power Rangers, yeah, Go-Go Power, and then I couldn't unhear it. So you telling me that it was intentional is awesome, because I thought it was like maybe it was just a happy coincidence. So do you remember putting that part in?
Yeah, I think I had a smirk when I did it. Yeah. And it's funny too, because like you said, the beginning, the title of the track, Sadness, fits the first half, but a lot of times it's like that's what we thought it was when we did the first part, and then the second part would come in. Like usually somebody else comes in and starts doing something. So maybe the second part of the track doesn't really fit with the title. So, and we didn't change it because it was just a file name.
Yeah.
So that's why it is the way that it is.
I would rename the track Overcoming Sadness, I think, because it kind of like it finds its way out.
Blue to drown your sadness and become insane.
Just ignore it; it'll go away.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this one, Mike?
I mean, I'm kind of mad at you that you brought that up, because now it's all I can hear.
Yeah.
I honestly, if you'd never pointed it out, it probably would have stayed kind of buried for me, and I probably wouldn't have heard it until maybe months later, and then been like, oh, that's kind of neat. I'm with you on the name of the song. I don't necessarily get sadness out of this, but I do get docks out of this. This just feels very dingy and dirty, especially a lot of those synths that were used more towards the beginning, combined with that hip hop beat with the da na 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 na, almost like rainfall. It's
yeah,
it's really unique.
And rainfall is a big part of this. I mean, like I said, it happens just as a rainstorm hits.
That solo, I just want to say, is so sick.
Yes.
Good job on that.
I think it was me, but I'm not. Might have been a combination of both of them.
It sounds a lot like it sounds a lot like your stuff to me. So I think you definitely probably had a hand in there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But once you unlock the PAPRIUM difficulty and start playing through with it, you get all these additional visual bonuses that appear throughout. So when you hit multiple enemies at the same time, you'll get a little flashing indicator that says like 3 hit, 4 hit, 5 hit, which is cool. Once in a while, Mike, if you're playing through, you remember like if you throw a guy into somebody, you'll hear showtime or
Right.
He actually pops up like a little toasty thing in the bottom of the corner. You'll see showtime pop up with a microphone and he'll yell it. But also when you get to a new level, it will display the name of the track on the bottom of the screen. So
that's cool.
So you start to associate the track names with the levels. So when you're on the docks, you'll see Sadness pop up. And the way the docks start is it starts very energetic. There's this track called Neo Metal, which I think you had originally chosen, Mike, but then took out of the show. Which just is very hard rockin', very energetic song. And you get on this car and you're like driving down the dock and this other dude's driving this car. And it's like a convertible and you're kicking all these dudes off the car. And then you beat all the enemies, but the dude's still driving the car. It'll go on infinitely until you have to beat the guy up that's driving the car. Right. And then the car stops and then this neo metal song just kind of fades away and turns into Sadness. So it's really jarring, because you get this really energetic song that turns into this kind of sadder song, and the rain starts coming down, and you're like, wow, this feels like a really low point in the game. Like, you're kind of imagining the characters like maybe on their last legs, and then it kind of picks up. So, it's cool. It's kind of as emotional as a 16-bit beat 'em up can get. There's a genuine emotion in this part of the game. So I feel like the Sadness really kind of fits well with it. So
it's funny you brought that up, that neo metal track, because oh man, that was a tough call to make on whether I should pick that one or my final pick, which we're gonna hear in just a few minutes. But yeah, like I really love that neo metal track. It was so good. But like when I heard this next track that we're gonna play, I was like, oh, I think I found my favorite.
It happens.
Yeah,
it does. And this is actually the one representative we have from the Solarium route, which I didn't really want to share too much of to begin with, because this route you have to unlock by doing a whole bunch of stuff in the game. So it's kind of spoilery, but like I said, I don't want to spoil too much about the end of the game, but this is definitely a kick-ass track and definitely belongs on the show. So what do we got coming up, sir?
So this Solarium route track that we're going to hear is called Trance, with an S instead of a C. And it's from the Dignity KTV level.
All right, let's hit it.
Hey, you're back to VGMbassy, and that was the Solarium Root track Trance with an S instead of a C. And that was in the Dignity KTV level from Jredd, our guest of honor, and Groove Master 303. Love this track. This might be my favorite track in the whole shish kebab. It's, I mean, I'm a sucker for melodic trance. And I'm also, I don't know, like, in my head, I started to put Cotton Eye Joe lyrics into this. So I'm listening to and I'm hearing like, where did you come from? Where did you go?
I wouldn't mind if somebody made that mashup. I have a good sense of humor. Somebody do it. But...
somebody do that, because I will put that in with my PAPRIUM mix of music.
That would be awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah. I really dig this, though. The melodies for sure hooked me and kept me rolling. And then I love some of the change-ups of the drums that were happening right around like the 2-minute mark, where you get like the like
that's Groove Master there. Those drum glitches.
That was awesome. Yeah. That was really cool. And even when the track slows down, like right before that, like maybe around like the 140, 139 like area, it's a nice ease up off the gas, and then you get right back to it after those drums kind of come in, and then the loop comes back around. So yeah, it was great. Good.
Yeah, we were having a lot of fun by this time. Thank you. We were having a lot of fun by this time, and so I think a lot of the melodies were me, but the horn section, that's Groove Master, and I believe the morphing of the FM synth. While I did the melodies, I got to give it to Groove Master for figuring out how we could do that in the tracker. Because that, like, it really adds, as you said, Ed, like kind of a more authentic trance sound to it, where you get those filtered synths and things.
Yeah, for sure. You can just kind of like see somebody in the Genesis kind of tweaking that knob, that LFO there. So my question was this song based on the description of the level, or was this just something that you guys wanted to do and threw it in? And because it's another one of those things where the songs fit so well with the level that it almost seems like they were paired together purposefully.
I think it was like maybe half and half. I think we'd started on this level or this song, and then we heard that a level was going to be like that, and then I think that's when Groove Master was starting to do like the filter sweeps, and we were really getting into it. So it's kind of half and half this time.
It's kind of reinforced your whole concept.
Yeah, we're like, okay, let's go all in then.
Yeah, that's cool. This is kind of one of the more special levels, because you have to beat another route and get an item from the boss of that route in order to unlock this level. Usually the game would stop. If you took the uppermost route, the game would stop at a certain point and not allow you to see the end of the top route until you get an item. So this is a great kind of reward for doing all the stuff that you need to do to get there. It's a very disco-style level. There's mirrors, flashing lights, there's shapes floating around on the ground. Some of the lady enemies are like dancing on tables, and then you like kick the table out from under them, and then they'll start fighting you. So it's cool. It's done very well. It feels like a very disco, trancey kind of environment, so the music just fits absolutely perfectly with it.
There's parts in the levels where, and not this level because I haven't gotten to this part yet, but there's parts where like you'll see a character that looks like you need to save them, where they'll be like pinned against the wall, or they'll like almost as if they need to be like saved, like an April O'Neil kind of situation where you gotta like cut them loose, Well, but like you do that and you think they're gonna like be your buddy or something, but they don't.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what those are. Those are enemies that have been so. The story of the game is that you used to be police, you found out that the police were corrupt, and now you're kind of railing against the police, but you're also railing against the criminals. So there's three factions. There's the police, which are your enemies, the criminals, which are your enemies, and you. So you're fighting both of them, and they're fighting each other. Those are enemies which have been arrested by the police and kind of left to be picked up at some point. Each time they have the little PAPRIUM symbol, like the little cross made up of 4 squares. They have them floating over their heads. Each time you disengage one of those enemies from their handcuffs, you get a little PAPRIUM symbol above your health bar. And once you rescue 5 of those enemies, you get a free guy. So it's basically you're collecting.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so every 5th is a free guy. And that carries over. If you beat the game and start another run, you'll see that it stays the same, so you can continually aggregate, free guys as you go each time you get 5 of those captured enemies. So
that's pretty cool.
Now you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
knowing is half the battle.
Exactly. I think we've got one more track. We're saving one of Dredd's tracks for last. This is actually the background music for the final boss, so we are not going to talk too much about the level or the boss itself. However, the music is pretty unique and pretty special, and I think that's probably why you chose it. So, Jredd, what do we got coming up next?
So next we have hardcore BP3, I believe basement level, right? And that's the last boss, as you said.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know why they call it BP3 because they don't take place in the basement. I'm not sure what BP stands for, but I don't know. Maybe we can theorize on that as we talk about it. So we'll be right back.
As we drink more blue.
Yeah.
Right, and that was Hardcore BP3, the last boss of the game, but we're not going to tell you what happens.
There's a lot of blue involved. That's the only thing I'll say.
Yeah, a lot of blue.
This actually really reminds me of that Castlevania secret track that's in Contra Hardcore. Was it Simon 1994 RD?
Sorry, I don't know that game. What is that game? Oh, you mean Contra Hardcore?
Yeah, I believe only... I was going to insult you really badly, but I was going to say only idiots call it that, but...
That's true. That's true. No, I agree with you. What is that? Vampire Killer, like AD 903 or something like that?
Yeah, or it depends on the region. I think in Japan on the soundtrack it's called Simon 1994 RD or something like that.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a very Baroque kind of track with a very techno beat going behind it on the Contra soundtrack, and this feels very similar. So... Well, was Castlevania any sort of an influence, Trev, when you were writing this?
Yeah, kind of. Basically, Groove Master was someone that made the beat, the bass, that whole thing. And then when I threw in a melody, I don't know why, I just had to do it. It just sounded so cool. And then Groove Master was like, okay, and then he did the second solo to follow mine. And then the third part with the PSG is me. So we're kind of trading back and forth solos on that one. And we're just like adding more and more things. And like, this is ridiculous. I love this track.
I'm glad you picked this one because I wanted to. And that Castlevania Baroque melody really hooked me for obvious reasons for longtime PTR listeners. I was really close to picking this one. And when I saw you picked it, much like that other track that we talked about earlier, I was like, well, I'm in the clear. I could pick something else.
Yeah, it's in the show. We're good.
Right.
I think as far as the picks go, we've all kind of did a really good, well-rounded... I think we all had a lot of very similar tracks that we wanted to share, so the fact that we picked each other's tracks a lot just kind of made it obvious to us which ones were the standouts.
Just so you know, Mike, I almost picked Neo Metal as well. I was very close.
Nice.
Neo Metal,
nice.
Yeah, I love that too. Group Masters video plug, right?
Yeah, for sure. I will actually link to that in our show notes as well, because that is kind of like, I guess, the de facto how you guys originally composed it before it got squished into the cartridge that Watermelon put out. So I'm going to theorize that BP stands for Boss Party.
Oh, there you go.
Hardcore Boss Party.
All right.
Sounds about right.
I think the B stands for Boss because all of the hardcore BP tunes 1, 2, and 3 are all Boss tracks. So it's probably Boss something, Boss PAPRIUM. Who knows?
Probably Boss Part, something like that.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think this is a great track for the final boss of the game. It's extremely frenetic. It's kind of panic-inducing, but it's also kind of religious in a sense. And I'm not saying that the final boss is religious in any way, but the final area has got kind of a cathedral kind of feel to it. So it does feel...
He's Jewish. He's Jewish.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oy vey. Yeah.
You got to kick
Bagels and lock.
You got to kick the yarmulke off the head.
Right. right. No, I actually agree with you on that one. I think that this track, much like a lot of final boss tracks in beat 'em ups, they often take on this like evangelical kind of very.
I've got to kill God.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So it fits. It fits very, very well. As far as we know, and as of the recording of this show, nobody has seen the true ending of the game yet, and nobody knows how to get it. So when you do finish the game, you see the end with a question mark, and sometimes you get credits, and sometimes you don't, depending on what you've done. But there is, according to Fonzie, there is a true ending, and you will know when you get the ending, but nobody has seen it yet. So
it's like being back in the 90s, not knowing everything.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a lot of the feeling that he wanted to bring to this game, and a lot of it has been the internet kind of gathering together and saying, well, I did this and it unlocked this. Well, I did this and it unlocked this. I found this secret area, you can go here. Oh, the other person finds this secret area, and then we kind of all get together, and everybody kind of learns
just
all
like
of the secrets.
At the schoolyard, and then somebody might say something that isn't
right
in the game, but you're like, maybe it is. I better go find it.
Yeah, and I know that Fonzie is not a big fan of like the Mega SGs and like the clone systems and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I feel like this in a lot of ways kind of echoes a lot of what he's saying, where he's like, play everything on a Genesis, play it on original hardware and everything. And the game is pretty intricately detailed in the sense that you can't even play it with stuff that you would think you might be able to play it with. For example, I bought a wireless Retrobit Genesis controller, which is an officially licensed Sega Genesis controller from Sega.
Yeah,
the wireless one, and it would not work with my Model 1 Genesis on PAPRIUM. And then I was like, well, okay, I'll go buy a regular 6-button controller, because for whatever reason I didn't have one and I wanted to try out the differences for my upcoming review. So bought for like $10 just a regular controller. So I plug in an extension cable, an officially licensed extension cable that came out in like 93 or whatever from Sega. Didn't work with that. If you plug in the extension cable, for whatever reason, like if you try to move down, it won't work. Like it gets finicky where like sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. It's almost as if like there's some kind of weird signal that's going
like
from
a shorted
the
connection.
Extension cable. Yeah, it's weird. So I understand that mentality of let's pretend like we're all back in like 5th grade and the new Genesis game or the new Super NES game just came out and we all are like trying to piece it together in the playground. It's a cool feeling. I like that feeling. At the same time, I feel like we've evolved enough as a community where it's like, all right, come on, help me out here.
Yeah.
Right.
It's kind of like that 5th grade feeling on steroids at this point, I think. I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I'm kind of a console collector, so I've got 2 Model 2 Genesises, a Model 1, an XI, and the Mega SG, but my 2 Model 2s won't even play this game at all. You get weird, glitchy graphics. My Model 1 won't play the game unless I have a Sega CD attached to it.
That's
my XI is the only one that will play the game like solid, and that's got a Sega CD
is going
built
to
in.
play this game, darn it.
Yeah, exactly, and it took me a little while to figure out how I was going to be able to play this game. But again, it's like with the Mega SG, it was Joe from GameSack that actually figured out how to get it to work on the Mega SG.
I heard about that, yeah.
Yeah, but there's graphical glitches. So now Kevtris, the guy that programmed all the FPGA stuff on the Mega SG, somebody sent him a game, and I'm on the Mega SG Discord, and he's explaining like in real time as he's looking at it, you know, how the cart works and how it sends commands to the Genesis and how he's going to be able to fix it to get it to display properly. So it's cool. You've got all these internet like gaming celebrities, quote unquote, like working together to try to figure out the game, and it's just this big thing, and it's cool to kind of be a part of it and to be able to sit there and play while people are figuring stuff out, to be able to talk to you, Jredd, to get kind of like the inside information on the music, which is, you know, one of the things I'm most interested in. So it's just been not only a cool game to play, but a really cool thing to kind of experience and to kind of immerse myself in and see all the controversy and all the revelations and everything that's going on. So it's almost like an ARG built into this game that's kind of happening by accident, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super trippy to be like, you know, 2013 me is a part of this whole thing in 2021. It's just super weird, but super cool.
Yeah, for sure. So we're wrapping up the show. Before we get into all the show ending stuff, Jredd, I just wanted to see if you had any comments about the NES remix that you did that we're going to be playing as the outro to the track. So how did that come about?
Yeah. So I pretty much love everything in the soundtrack to various degrees. You know, everybody's got their favorite. But one thing I do not like, which people are not supposed to like, is the very beginning trolling 8-bit section.
That's right, yeah.
Where it has that horrible ear-piercing noise. I'm like, dude, that's not right. Like, I know it's a joke, but that's painful. That's brutal. I'm like, all right, like, I think we can make an 8-bit version that's maybe not exactly the same because, of course, you know, you have your limitations. But I think I can make a version of this that's better than that, and we can do something rocking. So I just wanted to fix that little chest out. I'm like, no, that's unacceptable.
Yeah, so it's a little bit speed up. It seems like it has some of those Konami-esque percussion samples, which I really like. It like I said at the beginning of the show, it reminds me a little bit of like Tomoya Tomida's Ninja Turtles 3 NES soundtrack, kind of mixed with.
I was thinking a little bit like the Batman first level music was a little bit of an inspiration, and also like Nolan-esque harps and like pitch dives and things like that. Just things that I like.
Very cool. So stay tuned for that at the end of the show. I thank you guys so much for hanging out. I know it's a long show. I know it's late. It's getting towards midnight here anyways, and we started around 8 o'clock, so thanks for sticking with us. Mike, any final thoughts, and also give us a little info on where else we can find you via XVGM, and dude, you haven't played this game.
Well, thanks for having me and making me a part of this experience. You know, this was kind of I don't want to say a dream come true, but I will say it's fascinating to me that this game has come out after all these years, and and the fact that we've all been deep diving into the nuanced details of the game really lays out a testament to how well the game was created by everyone that worked on it. So, you know, hats off to the composers, hats off to Fonzie and the rest of the staff. Luis, who was the artist who did a fantastic job on the art.
Luis Martins,
just great, gorgeous game.
Without all of them, I wouldn't be able to kind of live out a strange, probably thought of impossible childhood dream of composing a soundtrack to a game system that I grew up with in 2021. That's ridiculous.
Unheard of, right? Yeah. As far as where you can find me, so I obviously Ed and I had a show called PixelTunes Radio, and when that show ended, he went on to do this show, and I went on to do with my buddy Justin, XVGM Radio. You can find us at xvgmradio.com. Basically, if you liked the more radio aspects of PixelTunes Radio, you'll probably dig XVGM. There's a lot of that. There's callers, basically game characters and stuff that call in and request tracks, and there's commercials, fake commercials. It's fun. We have a lot of fun doing the show, and we are 60. We just finished recording episode 69.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think by the time that this comes out, we will have already announced that episode 70 we are going to have on Barry Epic Topping, who did the soundtrack to Paradise Killer. So we're doing a spotlight on Paradise Killer's soundtrack.
Very cool.
So That's going to be awesome. Yeah, so xvgmradio.com or just at XVGM Radio on Twitter. We have our own Discord, the whole 9 yards. For me personally, youtube.com/dongled, or just type in "dude, you haven't played this game." You'll find me on YouTube. I'll be doing a review on PAPRIUM. And if you are a fan of the Eric Andre show, then you will really dig the skits that I'm going to be working on, because my goal is to basically have my own Eric Andre style show in the skits, and I'll be interviewing Fonzie, who's going to be played by me, just with different sized mustaches that'll just constantly be switching.
That's going to be amazing.
It's going to be a real riot, and he's basically going to be the straight man to my ridiculousness of being a host,
That's
jumping
awesome.
through walls and cutting cakes in half and all that 9 yards. So yeah, that's it for me pretty much. Oh, and on Twitter, I'm at DYHPTG, which is dude, you haven't played this game. So.
Right, of course. And you also have a great Discord channel as well, where people are hanging out and posting video game music and stuff.
Good time.
So, Jredd, our guest of honor, I'm so happy that we were able to finally do this after talking about it for the better part of a decade. Any final thoughts on PAPRIUM? Any new projects you have coming up?
So final thoughts on PAPRIUM is, thank God it came out, because I was about to explode. So we finally let the valve off of that pressurized situation. I'm just really happy to be here with you guys and be able to talk about this, and really thank you for keeping up your end of the bargain despite everything that's gone on, life-changing circumstances. We still got together and we still did this. So I'm very grateful to you both. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate it as well.
For sure.
And like I said, anything you got coming up? Any new albums? Any new games?
There's YM 2020 cartridges coming out soon. And if you guys remember YM 2017, I was one of the composers on that. I did Astro Blaster.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to be a composer on that again. So look forward to my track coming up on that.
Excellent.
So that's one thing that's coming.
Yeah, for sure. I have the YM 2017 car, and I still listen to it all the time, so I'm looking forward to that pre-order announcement, so I'll get my foot in the door on there. Excellent. If you want to find more VGMbassy, you can check me out on Twitter at the VGMbassy. You can head over to thevgmbassy.com. That way you'll see all of our shows. You can play all of our music in the browser as well. You can also check out our staff page and find little bios on all of our previous VG ambassadors. I know, Jredd, you're already on there. Mike will have to make an entry for you. And that'll be a lot of fun. I can't believe it's taken so long to get you on my show.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was more about finding the right project for us to work on,
For sure, because we'd already done so much of the stuff that we both are interested in on PixelTunes.
Right.
That it was difficult to kind of get something that we were both enthusiastic about. So
there's only so much Castlevania I can talk about, Ed.
I know,
really.
And there's only so much Fallen I can put you through.
Yes. Hey, Fallen is always a blessing to listen to.
That's true. He is He is Timothy Jesus Fallen, master of the very fabric of our reality.
What would that make Iku Mizutani for me?
Buddha?
Buddha. Sure. Let's go with that.
Iku Buddha Mizutani.
There you go.
Hey, I'm glad I'm the catalyst that brought you two guys back together. That's awesome.
He would be the bananas to our peanut butter and fluff sandwich, right?
No? That works. I mean, if you put bananas in your peanut butter nutter.
I'm getting hungry.
Yeah, seriously. Aside from VGMbassy.com, you can head over to our Discord. You can actually find the link to that on VGMbassy.com. I've got a huge video game music collection there. So if you guys recall from back in the PixelTunes days on Final Fantasy Shrine forums, I had a giant collection of music that I hand-ripped from games, all in MP3 format. When Final Fantasy Shrine went under, the collection kind of went by the wayside. It was just sitting on my computer. I finally found a good web space to upload it, and you can find all that on the VGMbassy Discord. You can actually even sort the games and listen to the music in the browser before you even download it. So it's a great way to kind of explore a huge collection. It's 289 gigabytes worth of games from all sorts of systems, from 8-bit all the way up to the modern consoles. So if you're into that stuff, go check it out. It's really good. I'm not on Facebook anymore, so the Facebook group for VGMbassy, it didn't really have any activity going for it anyways, so don't bother with that anymore, but definitely check us out on Twitter, on Discord, and on the website. Releases will be coming. There will be more VGMbassy shows coming out. Not every 2 weeks. I'm going to kind of just play it by ear and not stress myself out. I do have 2 more shows in the works. One will be a fun kind of indie, obscure PC game with some really good music by some demo sceners. That'll be coming up next. And then I'll have a show with Logan, and one of his favorite video game characters. We'll be exploring, kind of similar to the Kirby show we did together. We'll do a similar show for that. And so look forward to those. Hope everyone's having a great new year. Thank you guys both again for being on the show with me and hanging out till almost midnight. We will see you again. Absolutely. And we'll see you again on the next VGMbassy. In the meantime, check out the NES 2A03 remix of the PAPRIUM intro, and we will see you next time. Peace out, everyone.
Bye.